Chapter 518. Yi Luo had some idea about the feud between Lu Li and the others. At first, Lu Li only hated Lu Xuan and Lu and I. Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, and Dai Feiyu didn't even know Lu Li. At first, they wanted to kill Jiang Qiling. Why did they want to kill her? It was mainly Ji Mingtian who instigated it. The reason was obvious. It was for the throne of the #1 beauty of the central prefecture. Moreover, with the appearance of a heavenly talent in the Jiang family, the pavilion of delicacy would suppress the Samsara palace and become the #1 power in the Central Plains. By then, many resources would be seized. It was a good thing that a proud son of heaven had appeared in the human race. When the human race was weak, the human race would definitely celebrate. Everyone would hold this proud son of heaven in the palm of their hands, afraid that this proud son of heaven would fall. However, things are different now. The human race had been very strong for the past few thousand years, pressuring the 4 races to the point where they couldn't even breathe. Therefore, the appearance of a human prodigy would not be beneficial to the various clans. Instead, it would snatch away the clan's benefits. What was more, Jiang Qiling had a bad reputation. She had a bad personality and was unscrupulous. She never showed respect to disciples of the 12 royal families. If Jiang Qiling grew up, they would all be suppressed by her and suffer for the rest of their lives. Therefore, Lu Xuan, Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, Dai Feiyu, and the others hit off. Ji Mingtian once went to Yi Luo and hinted at him, but he refused. Later on, the allied forces of the 4 alien races besieged Jiang Qiling and Lu Li. But Yi Luo did not understand how Lu Xuan managed to mobilize the 4 alien races. Later on, Lu Li demonstrated his prowess and defeated the 4 alien races on his own. Everyone's perfect plan was aborted. All their planning and hard work had gone down the drain. Since Jiang Qiling was at the base camp of the human race, Lu Xuan and the others would not dare to do anything rash. So many people were watching. If they still tried to murder Jiang Qiling, Jiang Tianshun would tear them apart when they got out. They had to turn to Lu Li. Once again, Lu Xuan made plans. It took him over a month to build this formation. As a matter of fact, Yi Luo found Ji Mingtian and the others nearby by accident. That was why he sneaked in and followed Lu Li in. When he came in, he didn't move at first. It was not until he heard that the others were distorting the truth and putting the blame on Lu Li that he couldn't stand it anymore. From Yi Luo's point of view, regardless of whether one had a grudge or wanted to kill someone, they should fight it out in the open. Unlike this group of people who set up traps to kill and frame and persecute him, the disciples of the 12 royal clans all had a kind of pride in their bones. They were the strongest disciples of the royal clans, and this kind of behavior made Yi Luo feel ashamed. He felt that his own clan had lost face. That was why he came out. Finally, Lu Xuan and the others looked awful. Yi Luo was a disciple of the 12 royal families. Killing him would bring serious consequences. However, if they didn't kill him, everything here would be exposed. Judging from the situation, Yi Luo seemed to understand everything. What if he went out and spoke nonsense? Yang Xian and Dai Feiyu turned to Lu Xuan and Ji Mingtian respectively. Lu Xuan and Ji Mingtian looked at each other. A glint of ruthlessness rose in their eyes. Lu Xuan made the first move. He shouted, "I don't understand. How did Lu Li collude with alien races? So, you have accomplices. Capture Yi Luo and Lu Li and bring them back to the demon-slaying hall for the Hall of Patriarchs to deal with." Now, the appearance of Yi Luo made the situation go out of control. Lu Li was powerful, so Lu Xuan had to strike first. He released his divine armor immediately. His divine armor was blue in color. It was a rank 6 divine armor. The first young master of the Lu clan lived up to his name. Buzzing, Ji Mingtian took out her quasi-relic at once. The willow twig glowed and reached out like a sharp sword, trying to entangle Yi Luo. At the same time, Dai Feiyu made up her mind to release the origin of life, ready to heal those on her side at any time. The green glare enveloped Yi Luo and Lu Li as well, sucking away their life energy. A black shadow appeared on Yang Xian's neck, and then a huge ghost shadow emerged from the void. The ghost stared at Lu Li and Yi Luo with its blood-red eyes, ready to devour them at any moment. Whoosh, whoosh, more than a dozen warriors behind Yang Xian, Ji Mengtian, and Lu Xuan dashed out, releasing their bloodline skills and secret skills. They were not trying to capture Lu Li and Yi Luo, but to kill them. Yi Luo grabbed the huge sword on his back with one hand and struck the blue light barrier in front of him. He knew Lu Li was powerful. Now that the fight had begun, the first thing to do was to help Lu Li out. Buzzing, a black glare came out from Yi Luo's neck. It was the mark of a small sword. After the black glare, many small swords flew out and dashed forward like bolts of black lightning, killing enemies of 10,000 swords. Yi Luo's bloodline skill was horrifying. Many small swords whooshed across the sky, covering up the entire space in the underground cave. But those small swords all avoided Lu Li and shot out from the sides of the blue shield. Boom! Yi Luo's huge sword generated a long ray of sword chi, which hit the blue shield. The shield began to tremble violently. Then all the formation stones exploded. The horrifying gravitational force on Lu Li disappeared, and he could use his Xian energy again. The blue shield was famous at the Central Plains, called the Demon Trapping Formation. If there were more formation stones and the way it was set up was better, even human Sovereign Realm warriors could be trapped. That being said, the formation could only trap those inside, but not those on the outside. Yi Luo cracked it easily. Ha ha ha! Lu Li felt the gravitational force was gone. He stood up, threw his head back, and laughed. He drew his sword from his back and said, "Brother Yi Luo, you can just watch. I can kill all these demons and monsters by myself." Boom, boom, boom. The more than a dozen warriors were hit by Yi Luo's small swords. The small swords all exploded and they were smashed away, spitting out blood. The ghostly shadow in the sky was also hit by several black swords. The black shadow was getting weaker. After hundreds of black arrows passed through it, it was so weak that it became transparent. Yi Luo wanted to use his bloodline skill again, but he chose to step back after hearing Lu Li's words. It was not wise to make an enemy of the four forces. Since Lu Li was so confident, Yi Luo would just watch. Whoosh! Ji Mingtian's willow twig was aimed at Yi Luo. Now that Lu Li was free, Ji Mingtian would attack him at once. Aha! Lu Li stood where he was. He waved his hand and shouted, "Little White, bite off the willow twig." Squeak, squeak, Little White dashed out from his sleeve and dashed to the willow twig in a blur. Then it opened its mouth and bit at the willow twig. Little White's white teeth gave off a cold glare. There seemed to be some mysterious runes glowing in its teeth, which made people shudder with fear. Crack! They heard a clear sound. Then the vase with the willow twig glowed and then dimmed down at a horrifying speed. One part of the willow twig was broken. The other half was retracted and dimmed down as well. Clearly, it was damaged. What? Everyone, including Yi Luo, was shocked. Could the beast's teeth be made of relics that could destroy a quasi-relic? Just now, there were mysterious runes glowing in Little White's teeth. Was this beast a mythical beast? Lu Li didn't use soul attacks, nor did he use his saber. He didn't even have clones. With a cruel smile on his face, he shouted, "Little White, put all these bastards into the ding of Barbarian God. I will blast them into pieces with thunderbolts." P.S. That's the 5th chapter. More recommendations. What was more? QQ Reading has created a fun app called Talk of the Guru. You can ask me questions in Talk of the Guru. Just like the Q&A app, I will answer when I have time. Of course, don't ask me about Tai Huang's violence. I am so pure that I will not answer. Chapter 519. Buzz. A black light shone between Little White's eyebrows. Then, a small cauldron flew out and enlarged rapidly. The lid of the cauldron flew off, and a horrible pressure spread out. Then, a violent suction force covered Ji Mingtian and the others. Demigod artifact. Not good. Lu Xuan and Ji Mingtian shouted at the same time. Both of them knew what was good and what was not. They turned around and stepped back without any hesitation. Yang Xian and Dai Feiyu stepped back as well after a moment of hesitation. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Their subordinates weren't strong enough and their reactions weren't fast enough, so they were all sucked into the cauldron. Lu Swan and the others, on the other hand, could manage to fend off the suction force of the ding of Barbarian God. Lu Swan's blue mystic armor glowed. He stood firmly on the ground like a rock. The strong suction force could not even make him tremble. Lu Swan released his mystic armor as well, but it was only at the 5th rank. He could barely defend himself against the suction force. A pink armor appeared on Ji Mingtian's body. The shining armor could resist the suction force. Yang Xian's method was rather strange. He released 2 specters to pull him from the left and right so that he would not be sucked in. Dai Feiyu was in a worse state. A green armor appeared on her body. Her entire body was shaking as if she would be sucked in at any time. Oomph. Luli sneered. Tens of thousands of golden needles of psychic power poured out to attack their souls. Everyone had a soul defense treasure in their heads. However, at this moment, they were all focused on resisting the suction force. They had no time to care about their soul pawns. When the golden spiritual needle was about to pierce into the soul pond, everyone was startled out of instinct. They instinctively ignored the strong suction force and focused their minds on the soul pond. Of course, their bodies couldn't resist the strong suction force. Lu Swan was the first to be sucked in, followed by Dai Feiyu, Yang Xian, and Ji Tingyu. In the end, Lu Swan was the only one struggling. Lu Swan, you go in as well. Once again, Lu Li generated a strand of psychic power which transformed into knives and stabbed at Lu Swan's soul pond. Even though Lu Swan had treasures to protect his soul, he could not stand Lu Li's fierce attacks. He could not multitask and was sucked into the tripod as well. Bang! The lid of the cauldron closed again, and the group of people disappeared from where they were. They were all sucked into the Barbarian God cauldron. The ding of Barbarian God shrank and fell down. Luli grabbed it in his hand. Yi Luo was stunned. It took him a long time to come back to his senses. He looked at Little White and the ding of Barbarian God and asked, Luli, is this a quasi-relic? Luli had a good impression of Yi Luo. He nodded and said, yes, this is a quasi-relic. I took it from the prince of the barbarian race, Rue the Iron. You stole it. Yi Luo's nose twitched. He walked over and observed the ding of Barbarian God curiously. He used his divine telekinesis to check inside. When he saw Lu Swan and more than a dozen others trapped inside, he felt the miraculous power of the Creator. The tripod was in Lu Li's hand, but Lu Swan and the others were all in it. It did not seem right. Lu Li paid no more attention to Yi Luo. He said to Little White that had flown back to his shoulder, release thunderbolts and blast them. Kill them all. Lu Li's killing intent was aroused. He was almost killed just now. He was trapped twice. Even a man made of mud would lose his temper. His personality had always been like this. If he was angered, he wouldn't care about anything. Buzzing. The horns on Little White's head glowed. 2 thunderbolts shot out and hit the ding of Barbarian God. The ding of Barbarian God glared at once. Black air flowed around and mysterious runes glowed. A suffocating chi spread out. Swish, swish. At the same time, the inside of the ding of Barbarian God glared. The lid of the ding of Barbarian God glowed with electric arcs. The inhibition formation of the ding of Barbarian God was triggered by Little White, and thunderbolts began to gather. Ow! Lu Swan and Ji Mengtian stood in the ding of Barbarian God solemnly. Dai Feiyu stood behind Ji Mengtian in fear. Yang Xian, Lu Ni, and the others were attacking the ding of Barbarian God with their weapons. Swish! A streak of black thunderbolt whooshed down. Since there were so many people here, the thunderbolt targeted at a random person. That person was Yang Xian's subordinate. He was only at the initial stage of the Noble Lord realm. How could he dodge it? He was struck by the thunderbolt. He let out a miserable cry. His body was scorched. He collapsed to the ground and died immediately. There was smoke and a burnt smell coming out from his body. Luli, how dare you? Yang Xian shouted in rage. He released his bloodline skill and attacked the wall of the Ding of Barbarian God over and over again. At the same time, he yelled, "How dare you kill my man? I will cut you into pieces when we get out." Lu and I and Ji Mingtian looked at each other. Both were in a panic. The burnt bodies on the ground proved that Lu Li was not joking. He had made up his mind to kill everyone here. Ji Mingtian's hand glowed with Xian energy as she tried to activate the willow vase. She knew very well that to break a quasi-relic, she had to use other quasi-relic. It was impossible to crack a quasi-relic with heaven-grade Xian artifact and regular means. Unfortunately, the willow vase was damaged by Little White. Ji Mingtian tried several times, but failed. Lu and I didn't take out his weapon to attack. He looked at Dai Fei Yu and said, "Lady Fei Yu, use your bloodline skill, or we will all die." Many people's eyes glowed with fear. Dai Fei Yu's source of life bloodline was the most powerful healing skill in the world. As long as one was still alive, they could be healed quickly. Swish, swish, another thunderbolt came from above. It was aimed at Lu and I. Lu Ni's eyes glowed. He grabbed a man next to him and threw him above his head. He shouted, "Lady Fei Yu, heal him." Boom! The man that Lu and I used as a scapegoat was struck by the thunderbolt. He tumbled down, and his body was burnt. Dai Fei Yu's green light enveloped the man. Soon, she shook her head and said, "I cannot save him. The thunderbolt has killed him directly. He cannot be saved." Swish, 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 everyone's expressions changed. The thunderbolts were still gathering. Every time one of them came down, it could kill someone. The shadow of death loomed over everyone. Not even Lu and I and Ji Mingtian could stay calm. Boom! Another thunderbolt came down. This time, it was the warriors of the Pavilion of Blossoms. Dai Fei Yu was right next to them. She watched as she was burnt into ashes. Dai Fei Yu was frightened to see a girl she was close to die. She sobbed. Fear and despair were written all over her pretty face. Boom! Another thunderbolt came down. A girl next to Ji Mingtian was burned into ashes. Ji Mingtian's expressions changed. She made up her mind and shouted, "Lu Li, we admit defeat. As long as you don't kill us, you can name your conditions." Yang Xian added, "Lu Li, think about it. We are the best disciples of the Hades Society, the Samsara Palace, the Pavilion of Blossoms, and the Lu family. Once we die, you will be hunted down by the four forces. Think about your family, your loved ones, and your friends. We are in the wrong this time. As long as you don't kill us, we can talk about any conditions." Lu Li and Yi Luo had been keeping their psychic power locked on the Ding of Barbarian God. They could hear clearly what was going on inside, and what Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian said. Yi Luo sighed after some thoughts. "Lu Li, Yang Xian is right. If you kill the 5 of them, you will be in deep trouble. Nobody can save you. Let's let it go. Let go." Chapter 520. Inside the Ding of Barbarian God, the iron walls were glaring. They attacked with all their might, but the runes on the iron walls were glowing. None of their attacks could leave a mark on the iron walls. Boom! The lid glowed brightly. Thunderbolts were gathering. Almost every 20 breaths, a thunderbolt would strike down. The thunderbolts would track down people automatically. Every time, a warrior would be burnt to a crisp. Lu Xuan, Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, and Dai Fei Yu only had 14 warriors with them. Those were their closest and most trusted warriors. 9 of the warriors that were alive and kicking a moment ago had been burnt to a crisp. Smoke was rising from some of them, giving off a pungent smell that was nauseating. Watching their warriors being killed one by one, the warriors became more and more frightened. They were the best young masters and young ladies of the Central Plains with a bright future ahead of them. In the future, they would become famous figures. Naturally, they would not want to die here. Don't waste time. We cannot break the quasi-relic yet. Lu Xuan sighed, seeing that Yang Xian and Lu Xuan were still attacking. He looked at the lid with arcs of lightning in the sky. His eyes flickered as he tried to think of a way out. Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian had spoken, and so had Dai Fei Yu and Lu Xuan. But Lu Li didn't respond. The thunderbolts were still gathering. This meant that Lu Li was determined, and he would not stop until he killed them. Lu Xuan was not surprised by what Lu Li had done at the City of Mystic Armor. Lu Li had the courage to kill a patriarch of the Lu family. What else in the world was he afraid to do? Therefore, negotiation was pointless. They had to rely on themselves. Swish, another thunderbolt came down. Lu Xuan's eyelids twitched. He grabbed another warrior and threw him up. That warrior didn't struggle. His eyes were filled with the will to die. He was from the Palace of Blue Lions. He was here to protect Lu Xuan and Lu Ni and to die for them. Boom! Another warrior was burnt to a crisp. Yang Xian and the others stopped their attacks and gathered together. Yang Xian turned to Lu Xuan. His expressions were awful as he shouted, "Lu Xuan, don't you have many ideas? Hurry up and think of a way, or else we're all going to die here." "What are you panicking about?" Lu Xuan shouted in displeasure. He thought about it and said, "When the thunderbolts come, let's try to work together and see if we can weaken them." All right, everyone nodded slightly. If they could weaken the power of the thunderbolts, Dai Feiyu could be saved as long as they could not kill her. Under Lu Xuan's instruction, everyone scattered around the tripod. They stared at the lid, and their weapons glowed with Xian energy. Lu Xuan decided to try to release Xian energy for the first round of attack. After all, Xian energy was inexhaustible for everyone. Chi-Chi, a moment later, a thunderbolt struck down. Lu Xuan yelled, "Attack!" Huh! The remaining 9 people all released their Xian energy attacks. Streaks of saber light, sword shadows, and fist shadows whizzed out, shooting straight at the lightning. Boom! So many Xian energy attacks bumped into each other, resulting in a violent explosion that stirred up a gale. Black thunderbolts flew down from the center of the explosion and landed directly on Lu Xuan. Even with the cyan mystic armor over Lu Xuan's body, he was still smashed to the ground. Smoke rose from the cyan mystic armor. Lu Xuan rolled around on the ground, screaming in pain. He was trembling, which was too horrible to look at. Good. Lu Xuan and Ji Mengtian's eyes glowed. Lu Xuan was still alive. They could tell that the thunderbolts were much weaker. Plus, Lu Xuan had the mystic armor. Buzzing. Dai Feiyu released her source of life bloodline. Lu Xuan felt better after he was covered for a few breaths. He was still trembling on the ground, grimacing in pain. Yang Xian, use your bloodline skill later. Ji Mengtian, do it as well. The rest of you, keep attacking with Xian energy. Lu Xuan shouted. Ji Mengtian could not hold back anymore. A black phoenix mark appeared on her neck. Attack. Soon, thunderbolts came down again. Yang Xian released phantoms of ghosts, and a huge black phoenix flew out from Ji Mengtian's neck, aiming at the thunderbolts. At the same time, Lu Xuan gathered Xian energy and made a round shield which flew up to the sky. The others began to attack with Xian energy. Boom! All kinds of energy converged, and another explosion occurred. A gale was raised. If it weren't for the fact that they were leaning against the wall, they would have been smashed away. The thunderbolts were much weaker this time. This time, they were aimed at Ji Mengtian. Ji Mengtian's eyes were filled with fear. She dodged quickly. How fast could thunderbolts be? The space inside the tripod was limited. Still, Ji Mengtian was hit, and she was smashed away. Woo! Ji Mengtian let out a painful groan. Thick smoke rose from her black hair. Her beautiful eyebrows were burnt, and her pretty face was charred. Her body rolled on the ground, trembling. It was heartbreaking to see her like this. Sister Mengtian, Dai Feiyu released Source of Life Bloodline to heal Ji Mengtian. Ji Mengtian grimaced in pain and stood up. Her clear eyes were filled with unforgettable hatred. She shouted to the sky, "Lu Li, kill me this time if you have the guts. If you can escape, I will make you wish you were dead." Compared to the pain, Ji Mengtian cared more about her appearance and appearance. Girls love to be beautiful. Ji Mengtian paid attention to her appearance and appearance at all times. The prettiest girl of the Central Plains was in a sorry state. Her hair was burnt and many parts of her robe were burnt. Even the hair under her abdomen was burnt. Her hair was as messy as a beggar's and her skin was charred. There was a strange smell of burnt hair. She looked like a ghost. She had lost her demeanor as the prettiest girl of the Central Plains. Ji Mingtian, who had been mindful of her manners since she was a kid and had never been wronged, could not stand it. She almost lost her mind looking at everyone's strange looks. Luckily, Ji Mingtian had a heaven-grade armor over her body. If she were still wearing that pink dress, many parts of her body would be exposed. She would be so ashamed that she would kill herself. Lu Swan and the others breathed in relief. Judging by Ji Mingtian's looks, the thunderbolt was weakened by a bit. Ji Mingtian did not sustain any serious injuries. There was hope for them to survive. Phew, Yi Luo checked the situation inside and heaved a sigh of relief. The thunderbolts from the quasi-relic could not kill them. As long as Ji Mingtian and the others could survive, the matter would not be blown out of proportion. There was still a chance to turn things around. Little White. Luli was unhappy. He shouted coldly, "Didn't the barbarian race pour in a lot of thunderbolts? Increase the power of the bombardment, or use a few more bolts of lightning to blast them into pieces." Yi Luo rolled his eyes, speechless. Chapter 5:21. Swish, swish, Luli told Little White to increase its power or to shoot out more thunderbolts. After Little White did so, the situation inside the ding of Barbarian God changed. This time, there were no thunderbolts coming from the lid. Instead, there were thunderbolts all over the place. More and more thunderbolts came down. Ji Mingtian, Lu Swan, and Yang Xian were scared to death. That being said, the thunderbolts that came down were not powerful. Just now, the thunderbolts were as thick as an arm. This time, the thunderbolts were only as thick as 2 fingers, much weaker than before. But this time, there were too many lightning bolts. Electric arcs filled the sky and chased after the people inside. Even the charred corpses were hit by many of the bolts. Whoosh, whoosh, Lu Swan, Ji Mingtian, and the others tried to run away, but they were still struck by thunderbolts. Everyone's hair and fur were smoking, and their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Their entire bodies were covered in a charred smell. The thunderbolts were not powerful, but they were thunderbolts nonetheless. There were so many that they could not dodge. They were flying around as if they were being chased by ghosts. Soon, their hair was almost burned off, and so were their eyebrows. There was a burning smell coming from their abdomens. They were trembling as if they were having an epileptic fit. Some were foaming at the mouth. Luckily, the thunderbolts were weak, so they could not be electrocuted to death. Dai Feiyu would use her source of life bloodline to heal them from time to time. "Luli, I will kill you. I will kill you. Luli, you bastard. You son of A.B*TCH. Let me out if you have the guts. We will fight to the death. Luli, you bastard, Luli, stop. I know I am wrong. You can do whatever you want. Stop," they were screaming. Lu Swan and Yang Xian were swearing and swearing. Ji Mingtian was doing the same. Dai Feiyu was begging. Even though she had source of life, she was still disfigured by the thunderbolts. Her skin was burnt, and she was almost roasted. Yi Luo scanned the area for a while, and his heart, which had been hanging in midair, calmed down. It seemed that the quasi-relic could not unleash its full power in Little White's hands. If the thunderbolts were to be gathered together, it would take time. Lu Swan and the others had time to prepare. If it was divided into dozens, its power would weaken, and it wouldn't be able to kill everyone. Luli looked awful. He glanced over to Little White and asked, "You cannot make it more powerful?" Squeak, squeak, Little White shook its head, indicating that this was the best it could do. Luli frowned. Quasi-relics were indeed horrifying, but it all depended on the person using them. Whitey was a Xian beast after all. It was good enough that it could control the ding of Barbarian God. He could not hope for more. Then let's continue like this. Don't stop. Kill as many as you can. Let's see how long they can last, Luli said after some thoughts. Then he threw the tripod to Little White and said, "Put this tripod in. If they do anything strange, tell me at once. If not, keep blasting until they are all dead." Squeak, squeak, Little White was obedient. The ding of Barbarian God glowed and disappeared between Little White's eyebrows. Lu Li didn't care anymore. He cupped his fist to Yi Luo and said, "Young Master Yi, thank you for your help this time. I will make friends with you. If you need anything in the future, I will do my best, even at the cost of my life." Yi Luo smiled, shook his head, and said, "Lu Li, don't mention it. I'm friends with Lu Hongyu and Lu Lin. I've heard some things about you. Your courage, character, and combat power make me feel inferior. It's my honor to be friends with you." Sister Hongyu? Lu Li thought about it. Lu Hongyu was a pretty girl with a good personality. It seemed that Yi Luo was pursuing her. Lu Li cupped his fists again and said, "Then this is goodbye. I have to hunt for alien races to earn points. See you later." "Okay, see you." Yi Luo nodded. Seeing that Lu Li was about to leave, Yi Luo couldn't help but say, "Lu Li, don't kill if you can. If you offend the four forces, the consequences will be unbearable." Lu Li turned his head to the side, paused for a bit, and left without saying anything. Yi Luo didn't blame Lu Li. Instead, he knew that Lu Li was doing this for his own good. If those warriors were killed by Lu Li and Yi Luo was with Lu Li, it would not be a good thing for Yi Luo. Looking at Lu Li's back, Yi Luo became more and more solemn. Clearly, his advice was not going to work. Lu Li was a man of steel. He would try his best to kill Lu Xuan, Ji Mingtian, and Yang Xian. "Let's go." Yi Luo thought about it. He had to go back to the base camp as soon as possible and find Lu Hongyu, Lu Lin, and Jiang Qiling to persuade Lu Li. Otherwise, it would be a disaster. Lu Li didn't go back to the base camp. After he left the cave, he rushed toward the base camp of the barbarian race. He had made up his mind to kill some warriors. As for what would happen after he killed them, he didn't think about it anymore. If a man was afraid of everything he did, then he would not be suitable to walk the path of a martial artist. Every powerful warrior that stood at the peak had climbed up by stepping on the bodies of others. If he didn't dare to kill this person or that person, then he would be the one to die in the end. If the four forces attack me together, I will hide in the deserted world and destroy the tunnel. I will cultivate in there for dozens of years. Lu Li made up his mind. This time, Lu Xuan, Ji Mingtian, and the others had completely pissed him off, especially Lu Xuan. If he didn't kill him, there would be endless troubles in the future. If he let them go, human sovereign realm warriors of the four forces would come soon. He only had God of Meng on his side. How could he fight them? By then, the northern desert would still be leveled to the ground, and he and everyone else would have to die. If so, he might as well kill them to avoid future troubles. A man should know what to do and what not to do. As far as Lu Li was concerned, he had his reasons. Lu Li rushed toward the base camp of the barbarian race. Along the way, he slaughtered all the alien races. He had powerful soul attacks and the ding of barbarian god. Nobody in the small world could defeat him. Yi Luo went back to the base camp as fast as he could and found Lu Lin, Lu Hongyu, and Jiang Qiling. They were frightened when they learned that Lu Li had taken Ji Mingtian, Lu Xuan, and the others into the quasi-relic, and that he was determined to kill them. Not even Jiang Qiling, who was fearless, would dare to do something like this. After all, the five were the best young masters and young ladies of the four forces. Their death would shake the entire Central Plains. By then, when the powerful warriors of the four forces came to the northern desert, Lu Li and his friends and subordinates would all meet a tragic end. Jiang Qiling thought about it for the time, for half an incense stick to burn before she ordered, "Send someone out. Send everyone you can. We must find Lu Li. When you find Lu Li, tell him what I want. Don't kill him." Lu Hongyu and Lu Lin sent people out as well. They went out in person to find Lu Li. Before things got worse, they must find Lu Li and stop him. With so many people mobilized, it was inevitable that the news would be leaked. When many warriors learned that Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian were captured by Lu Li and could be killed at any time, the entire base camp was boiling. Chapter 522. After 6 days, Jiang Qiling could not sit still any longer. So many people had gone to look for Lu Li, but none of them could find him. Everyone brought a jade talisman with them. If they found Lu Li, They would crush the jade talisman. But it had been 6 days and nothing had happened. Jiang Qiling had rested for a while, but her soul was still injured. Her decision to go out in person scared Jiang Hu. Jiang Qiling had sent many people out, but Jiang Hu wouldn't leave no matter what, because Luli had given him an order. If anything happened to Jiang Qiling, Jiang Hu would have Jiang Hu's head. Who was Luli? He was a killing god who had the guts to kill Ji Mengtian, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, and Dai Feiyu. If anything happened to Jiang Qiling, Luli wouldn't mind killing Jiang Hu. For the sake of his own life, Jiang Hu was also worried about Jiang Qiling. He knelt in front of Jiang Qiling and begged her not to go out. Jiang Hu even threatened to kill Jiang Qiling if she dared to go out. Jiang Qiling would not hesitate once she had made up her mind. She released soul feast butterflies at once to knock Jiang Hu out and then left. When Jiang Hu came back to his senses, he gathered more than a dozen warriors and went after her. He was lucky that he managed to catch up with Jiang Qiling after half a day. Luli was still running around in the wild. It was not because Jiang Qiling's warriors were useless. It was because Luli had used his psychic power to detect people nearby, so he took a detour. How strong was Lu Li's soul now? Luli himself didn't know. His soul had been transformed by divine energy and had made a qualitative leap. It might be stronger than the peak of the noble lord realm. Therefore, he would usually find people nearby first. Before they could find him, he would have taken a detour. He was still on his way to the base camp of the barbarian race, planning to ask Rui the Iron how to increase the power of the Ding of Barbarian God. Even if he couldn't get any answers, he could ask the barbarians to shoot out thunderbolts to replenish the energy of the Ding of Barbarian God. The Ding of Barbarian God had been in Little White's head, so Luli didn't know what was going on inside. Little White never came out from his sleeve, which meant that it was peaceful inside the Ding of Barbarian God. Those people didn't do anything, and they weren't dead. That was why Little White didn't react. Ji Mengtian, Lu Xuan, and Yang Xian were still alive. However, they were in even more pain than death. Some of them even had the urge to commit suicide. These 6 days were like suffering in hell for them. Thunder and lightning constantly struck them, but they were helpless and could only endure it. Now, no one was running or dodging. They just sat cross-legged on the ground or lay down to resist. Because the speed of the lightning was too fast and the space inside the cauldron was too small, no one could dodge it. In the end, they would still be struck by the lightning. Since he would be struck anyway, was there any difference between dodging or not dodging? What did it feel like to be constantly struck by lightning? It was like pressing a person's head into the water, waiting until they couldn't take it anymore before pulling it out, letting them take a few breaths, and then pressing it back down again. Being struck by lightning was even more uncomfortable than being pressed into water. His entire body was electrocuted, and the muscles all over his body would feel a tearing pain. His skin would be scorched, and it would feel like he'd been thrown into a fire. Every time he was struck by lightning, his body would tremble uncontrollably, his eyes would roll back, and he would foam at the mouth. Every 2 hours, Dai Feiyu would release her source of life bloodline to heal them so that they wouldn't die from injuries that were too severe. The situation inside the cauldron of Barbarian God was several people were lying on the ground, being struck by lightning. Their bodies were twitching rhythmically, and they would roll back their eyes and foam at the mouth from time to time. When the pain and numbness were gone, they could take a few breaths and wait for the next lightning, strike with their eyes closed. Apart from Ji Mengtian and Dai Feiyu, everyone else was lying on the ground without caring about their appearances. Only the 2 young ladies were paying attention to their manners. They sat on the ground with their legs crossed, gritting their teeth. But they didn't have much manners to speak of. Lu Xuan and the others even did something strange. They lay among the dead bodies because the dead bodies could share some of the lightning strikes with them. However, the dead bodies had been lying there for a few days. They were starting to smell the stench. When they lay close to the dead bodies, they could smell the rancid smell. When they opened their eyes, they could even see the eyes of those who died with everlasting regret. Boom, 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 thunderbolts came down and shot into their bodies. All of them were trembling rhythmically. Some of them were moaning in pain. More of them were like dead bodies. The moment they were struck by lightning, They would tremble and then stop moving. Nobody was cursing, nobody was begging for mercy, and nobody was crying. They had no energy left to curse or beg. Luli didn't respond. His tears had dried up, and he couldn't cry anymore. Occasionally, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, and the others would open their eyes, filled with unforgettable hatred. Dai Feiyu and the other young lady opened their eyes, regretting that they should not have made an enemy of Lu Li. One or two of them were in despair. It seemed that Lu Li would not let this go. They hadn't eaten or slept for 6 days and 6 nights. At this rate, only death awaited them. Every time they tried to eat something, their stomachs would churn after being struck by lightning. They would throw up everything, and they could only drink some water. At this rate, they would become weaker and weaker. At first, Dai Feiyu would release Source of Life bloodline every time for 1 incense stick to burn. Now, it was once every 2 hours. After a while, she would release it every couple of hours. In the end, Dai Feiyu would be too weak to release Source of Life bloodline. All of them would become grilled meat. For some of them, death was a relief. If they had the courage to commit suicide, they would have done so a long time ago. This torment was too painful. Lu Li couldn't see or hear what was going on inside, and he didn't want to. Now that he had made up his mind to kill them, he had no more concerns. He continued to rush forward. After traveling for a day and a half, he suddenly stopped and frowned. There were 2 people in front of him, 2 familiar faces. One of them was Yi Luo, of the Tumulus of Universe, whom he had just parted ways with not long ago. The other one was a pretty lady in a red dress. She was Lu Hongyu, the granddaughter of Patriarch 8 of the Lu family. Lu Li was about to move away when he felt a gentle breeze. It was Yi Luo's psychic power. Lu Li knew he had been discovered. He had to move forward with a bitter smile. Yi Luo had brought Lu Hongyu over. Lu Li had guessed something. Lu Li, you are hard to find nowadays. Seeing Lu Li coming over, Lu Hongyu sneered. Before Lu Li could say anything, she curled her lips and scolded. Lu Li, you have grown up now. Do you not want me to be your friend anymore? If not, then just pretend I am not here. You can go on your way. Lu Li forced a smile, cupped his fists, and said, I can disown anyone but you, Sister Hongyu. Okay. Lu Hongyu waved her hand and said, Go back to the base camp with me. Your lover, Lady Jiang, is so angry that she can't get out of bed because of you. If you insist on doing things your own way, she will die. Chilling? A glint of coldness rose in Lu Li's eyes. They were about to arrive at the base camp of the barbarian race. Even if Rue the Iron didn't know how to increase the power of thunderbolts, he could at least send some barbarians into the Ding of Barbarian God to kill them. Clearly, Lu Hongyu was here to stop him from killing. She also mentioned Jiang Qiling. Lu Li was in a dilemma. Lu Hongyu saw that Lu Li was hesitating. She thought of something and said, Lu Li, I know what you are thinking. You think the 4 forces will get back at you whether you kill Ji Mingtian or not, right? Actually, you are wrong. If you don't kill them, there is still room for negotiation. Have you forgotten who the law enforcement patriarch of the demon-slaying hall is? He is our great-grandpa. You are not in the wrong. I think the demon-slaying hall will do you justice with the law enforcement patriarch here. P.S. Some people are asking when the regular update will resume. The old freak was not sure. After all, many things happened around the Mid-Autumn Festival. The regular update would resume on the 18th at the latest. Chapter 523. Great-Grandpa. Lu Li frowned. An old man's face popped up in his mind. He shook his head and said, Great-Grandpa's soul has been reconstructed. He has no memory of the past. He has nothing to do with the Lu family. He doesn't even care about my grandpa's life. Why would he care about me? You are wrong, Lu Li. Yi Luo interrupted. Humans are not plants. How can we be emotionless? We have a forefather who had his soul reconstructed. He doesn't recognize us on the surface. But I know he will take care of the Yi family as long as he does not violate the principles of the demon-slaying hall. I know something about your grandpa. He is poisoned by a horrifying voodoo poison. The demon-slaying hall will have to pay a huge price to cure it. If the Lu family can make a great contribution in the demon-slaying battleground, I believe your great-grandpa will help. But after your grandpa was poisoned, nobody from the Lu family went to the demon-slaying battleground. How can your great-grandpa help? He is the patriarch of law enforcement, but he has neglected his duty for personal reasons. How can he stop people from talking? But you are different. This is not your fault. You are a disciple of the Lu family. You have killed so many alien races at the small battlefield and made a great contribution. Even if the four families were to work together, your great-grandpa will take your side. After all, you are his disciple. Luli was surprised by Yi Luo's words. Luli thought it made sense. After his grandpa was poisoned, Lu Zhongtan and the others were busy fighting for power. Why would they send someone to the demon-slaying battleground to gain merits? Some powerful warriors of the Lu family that wanted to come would be suppressed by Lu Zhongtan. Lu Zhongtan wished his grandpa would never wake up. Demon-slaying battleground? The real demon-slaying battleground was filled with powerful warriors of the four races. There were many human sovereign realm warriors and some earth immortal realm warriors. Given Lu Li's abilities, he would only be courting death. Could he be as powerful as an earth immortal realm warrior in this lifetime? By the time he reached that level and entered the demon-slaying battleground, his grandpa would have perished. Seeing that Lu Li was silent again, Lu Hongyu tried to persuade him again. Lu Li, Yi Luo is right. As long as the demon-slaying hall is involved, none of the four forces will touch you, at least for the time being. Trust us and trust your great-grandpa. All right. After a while, Lu Li exhaled and said, "Then I will let them live." Little White. Little White was sleeping soundly when it was woken up by Lu Li's shout. Lu Li looked at Little White and said, "Take out the ding of barbarian god." Buzz. A small tripod shadow emerged from Little White's head. Soon, it turned into a tripod in Lu Li's hand. Lu Li, Yi Luo, and Lu Hongyu checked with psychic power. This, Lu Hongyu and Yi Luo checked inside, and their expressions changed instantly. The scene inside the ding of barbarian god was shocking to both of them. Dai Feiyu and Ji Mingtian were sitting side by side with their legs crossed. Their hair and eyebrows were burned off, and their skin was scorched. They were still being attacked by the thunderbolts, and their bodies were shaking rhythmically. If they did not look carefully, they would not be able to recognize Ji Mingtian and Dai Feiyu. They were famous beauties in Middle Prefecture and were no different from ferocious ghosts and beggars. Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, Lu Enai, and the others were on the ground. There were several bodies next to Lu Enai and Yang Xian. They were also being struck by thunderbolts every now and then. They would tremble every now and then. Lu Enai and the others were foaming at the mouth. It was a miserable sight. Little White, stop the thunderbolts. Lu Li curled his lips and said with a straight face. The horns on Little White's head glowed. Finally, the inhibition formation in the ding of barbarian god stopped. The glow on the iron wall faded away. It was pitch dark inside. Buzzing. Soon, several pairs of eyes opened. Their eyes were somewhat dazed, as if they were dreaming. They looked at each other to make sure that it was not a dream. Then, they were delighted to have survived a disaster. Many grinned, showing their white teeth. It was quite spooky in the darkness of the ding of barbarian god. Buzzing. Dai Feiyu reacted quickly. She released Source of Life Bloodline to heal everyone. After a while, everyone's wounds were healed. Making sure that there were no more thunderbolts, Yang Xian, Lu Enai, and the others sat up, grimacing in pain. Yang Xian looked around for a bit. Gradually, anger appeared on his face. He shouted hysterically, "Lu Li, go on if you have the guts. Kill me if you have the guts. What is it? You don't have the guts to kill me? You are such a coward. When I get out, I will cut you into pieces." Lu Enai was enraged as well. He stood up, pointed to the sky, and cursed, using all kinds of vulgar words. Lu Enai and Ji Mingtian looked at each other, shaking their heads with a bitter smile. Boom, boom, boom. The answer they received was another flash of electric arcs. Countless thunderbolts struck down. Dai Feiyu was almost scared out of her wits. She shouted, "You two idiots, stop it now. If you continue to curse, we will suffer even more. Luli, don't hit me. I know I'm wrong. I really am. Dai Feiyu apologized sincerely. Unfortunately, thunderbolts attacked indiscriminately. She was struck again. She trembled and couldn't say a word. Yang Xian and Lu and I watched as the thunderbolts struck down. Fear and regret rose in their eyes. For them, the 8 days were more torturous than hell. They almost lost their minds. Finally, the thunderbolts stopped. But because of their insults and threats, the thunderbolts struck again. Everyone was implicated because of them. Luli, let it go. Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu looked at each other speechlessly. Lu Hongyu could not help but beg for mercy, seeing how miserable they were. Don't worry, they are not going to die, Luli said casually. He thought about it and said, the base camp of the barbarian race is up ahead. I will go get some thunderbolts, and then I will go back with you. Sister Hongyu, find someone to send a message to Jiang Qiling. Tell her not to worry. I will be back soon. Why are you going to the base camp of the barbarian race? Lu Hongyu was surprised. Luli had already rushed toward the base camp of the barbarian race. Lu Hongyu went after him. Yi Luo crushed a jade talisman in his hand and went after Luli. In a couple of hours, they arrived at the base camp of the barbarian race. Seeing that Lu Li, the god of slaughter, had come back, the barbarians were in an uproar. Rui the Iron was devastated to see Lu Li. Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu stood behind Lu Li nervously. Looking at the dense crowd of barbarians, they were holding their breaths. Lu Li stood in the front, glancing over the base camp of the barbarian race. Eventually, he saw Rui the Iron in the crowd and shouted, Rui the Iron, get out here. The barbarians were in an uproar again. Rui the Iron walked over with several barbarians with bitter expressions. They stood at the edge of the base camp, afraid to come out. Rui the Iron pulled a long face. He looked at Luli and said, Human punk, what do you want now? Luli waved the ding of Barbarian God in his hand and asked, Can the power of the ding of Barbarian God be increased? Can I kill human sovereign realm warriors with it? Rui the Iron was stunned. Then, a glint of coldness rose in his eyes as he asked, You had taken control of the ding of Barbarian God? Luli sneered and said to Little White in a low voice. Little White's head glowed with electric arcs. Luli threw the ding of Barbarian God into midair. The ding of Barbarian God enlarged in midair and floated in midair. Black air was flowing around the ding of Barbarian God, and some mysterious characters were looming. Luli stared at Rui the Iron and said, Rui the Iron, how about I take you in? Let's see if you can kill them for a few days. You could take control of it? How is that possible? Chapter 524. I'm a sinner of the barbarians. Rui the Iron was extremely regretful. The barbarian tribe did not have many semi-divine weapons. This thing was very precious. Once he returned, his king father would probably skin him alive. If he found out that he had given it to the human race and had even been refined by them, his bones would probably be broken and his tendons pulled out. If humans took control of the quasi-relic, they would be more powerful. Luli looked so young. When he grew up and went to the demon-slaying grounds, it would be a disaster for the races. The more Rui Iron thought about it, the more regret and fear he felt. This time, when he returned to the barbaric land of the north, he would definitely be in a miserable state. He might not be killed, but his days would definitely not be easy. Luli was annoyed by Rui the Iron's silence. He shouted coldly, Are you going to talk or not? If you don't tell me, I'll put you and the barbarians inside. I won't kill you, but taking you back to the Central Plains is not against the Heaven Reverse Blood Oath. By then, we can ask powerful human beings to chop you into minced meat and make dumplings out of you. Rui the Iron's expression changed several times before he gritted his teeth and said, The power of the barbarian god cauldron can indeed be enhanced. It's no different from the demigod artifacts of your human race. However, if you want to increase its power, you must first raise the realm of the user. I can't help you with that. If you reach the human sovereign realm, you will be able to kill a human sovereign with the ding of barbarian god. Luli frowned. Little White had taken control of the ding of barbarian god. Could Little White improve its realm? How do Xian beasts cultivate? He looked at Rue the Iron coldly and said, "Are you sure you are not lying to me? You know the consequences of lying to me." Rue the Iron looked like he was about to cry. He shook his head and said, "Why would I dare to lie to you?" "All right." Luli asked Little White to fly the ding of barbarian god to the open ground outside and said, "Tell your men to release thunderbolts to increase the energy of the ding of barbarian god. Otherwise, I won't be able to use the ding of barbarian god once the power of thunder is used up." Rue the Iron was surprised. Luli didn't know how to absorb energy from heaven and earth. There was a seal inside the ding of barbarian god. Once it was activated, it could absorb energy from the heaven and earth. Last time, he had the barbarians pour in the power of thunder and lightning only to increase its power. His mind raced, and he soon smiled bitterly. "Human, my subordinates have injected a lot of lightning power into them. It's enough for you to use for a long time. They don't have much lightning power left, so just let them go. Cut the crap. Let them pour in the energy of thunderbolts, or I will kill you." Luli didn't care so much. He put on a ferocious look. "All right." Rue the Iron looked helpless. He gathered groups of barbarians to shoot thunderbolts at the cauldron of barbarian god from afar. He was secretly delighted. Luli didn't know how to use the ding of barbarian god to absorb energy from heaven and earth. After a period of time, this quasi-relic would run out of energy and become a useless tripod. Chi! Countless electric arcs flew over and entered the ding of barbarian god. Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu, who were watching from afar, were left speechless and shocked. Luli had stunned so many barbarians by himself, and he could command them to do things. This was unheard of. When the barbarians poured in thunderbolts, those in the ding of barbarian god were suffering. The power of the thunderbolts increased. Electric arcs danced around, making them scream. Dai Feiyu was frightened. She thought Luli had increased the power of thunderbolts in a fit of rage. At this rate, none of them could stand it. Soon, they would all be burnt. Yang Xian and Lu Swan were frightened as well. They felt the power of thunderbolts had increased by several times. They were in despair. It seemed that they could not escape this time. Lu Swan fell to the ground again, and so did Jimeng Tian. Both of them fell to the ground. Both of them were very shrewd and did not show their emotions on their faces. But in the depth of their eyes, there was fear as well. Nobody wanted to die. They were in the prime of their lives. How could they die like this? After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, Luli came to his senses. He checked with psychic power and was taken aback as well. The power of the lightning had increased. If he had forgotten about the few of them, they would have all been blasted into a pile of charcoal in 2 hours. He told Little White to stop the thunderbolts. Those in the ding of barbarian god could not even open their eyes. They were badly injured. A young lady of the Pavilion of Blossoms and one of Jimeng Tian's subordinates were killed. Only 7 of them were still alive. Dai Feiyu was so weak that she could not use her bloodline skill. They had to mobilize Xian energy to treat their wounds. An hour later, Dai Feiyu had recovered a bit. She began to use her bloodline skill to treat their wounds. Soon, Jimeng Tian sat up. So did Yang Xian, Lu Swan, and Lu and I. But this time, nobody dared to insult Luli. They all sat in silence. They understood that they were prisoners now. Insulting and threatening Luli would be pointless. They would only infuriate Luli and suffer more. The more than 2,000 barbarians released thunderbolts for a day and a half before Rue the Iron told them to stop. He cupped his fists and said with a bitter smile, "My people are dying. Most of the thunderbolts have gone in. It should be enough for you to use for more than a decade." Okay. Luli could tell that many barbarians looked awful and exhausted. He told Little White to put away the ding of barbarian god and left with Lu Hongyu and Yi Luo. This time, Luli didn't take his time. He was worried about Jiang Qiling. He took Lu Hongyu and Yi Luo on his fate wheel and flew back to the base camp as fast as he could. So fast, Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu looked at each other and then at each other. They knew that Lu Li was powerful, but not this powerful. He was even faster than a warrior at the initial stage of the human sovereign realm. This time, Lu Li didn't let Little White put away the ding of barbarian god. Every once in a while, he would check with psychic power. There was no more thunderbolts. He wouldn't mind blasting them for a few more days if they were to cause trouble in there. The three of them flew day and night in a straight line at the top of their speed. At this speed, they would be back to the base camp in 4 or 5 days at most. 2 days later, they had covered half of the distance. All of a sudden, a man flew over from the distance. He saw Lu Li, Yi Luo, and the others with psychic power and shouted, "Yi Jian?" Yi Luo raised his eyebrows and said to Lu Li, "He is from my family." Lu Li stopped. Lu Li stopped his fate wheel. Yi Luo landed in front of Yi Jian and asked, "Yi Jian, how come you are alone? Where are the others? What happened?" Yi Jian had a team of 7 or 8 people with him. Now, he was alone and covered in blood. Yi Luo had a bad feeling. Hearing Yi Luo's question, Yi Jian burst into tears and said, "All dead, all dead. They were killed by Yang Qi and Ji Nu just now." "What?" Yi Luo's eyes reddened. Lu Li and Lu Hongyu looked over as well. Yi Jian didn't know Lu Li and Lu Hongyu, so he didn't pay attention to them. He explained with tears in his eyes, "The Hades Society, Samsara Palace, Pavilion of Blossoms, and the Lu family gathered together to attack young Lady Jiang. We just happened to pass by. We thought you were close to young Lady Jiang, so we came to talk to you. Little did we know that Yang Qi and the others tried to kill us as well." Lu Li's eyes were wide open. His hair stood on end like an angry lion. He interrupted and shouted, "Which young Lady Jiang? Jiang Qiling?" "Yes." Seeing that Lu Li was with Yi Luo, Yi Jian didn't hesitate. He had just nodded when Lu Li flew over. He picked Yi Jian up with one hand and shouted, "Lead the way now." Yi Luo hopped onto the fate wheel as well. Without wasting any time, he shouted, "Lead the way. Over there." Chapter 525. The reason why Yang Qiji and Ji Nu attacked Jiang Qiling was simple. Jiang Qiling was close to Lu Li. They wanted to save Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, and the others, but they couldn't find Lu Li. They had to take Jiang Qiling to threaten Lu Li. If Jiang Qiling didn't leave the base camp, they wouldn't dare to do anything. After all, there were too many of them. Jiang Qiling came to find Lu Li in person, and she was weak. Naturally, they were tempted. As long as they could take Jiang Qiling down, they could negotiate with Lu Li. When Jiang Hu caught up with Jiang Qiling, he only had more than 10 warriors with him. Later on, he was worried, so he gathered more than 20. Luckily, Jiang Hu did. Otherwise, he would have been dead and Jiang Qiling would have been captured. Boom, boom, boom. On a ridge, Jiang Qiling and the others were being attacked. There were only 9 people with Jiang Qiling. If it weren't for the fact that Jiang Qiling and Jiang, who had 8th rank bloodline soul feast butterflies, they would all be dead except for Jiang Qiling. Jiang Qiling had a holy grade armor and a shield of the holy grade, which was strong in defense. Even so, blood was coming out from the corner of her mouth. Her soul had not recovered yet. She had used too many skills of the soul feast butterflies, which aggravated her soul. She was hit by many attacks, and her internal organs were shaken. There were people at the foot of the ridge. There used to be more than 100, but Jiang Qiling killed 30 or 40. Now, the number had increased to more than 200. They were all gathered by Yang Qiji and Ji Nu. Many of them were not disciples of the Samsara Palace, the Pavilion of Blossoms, the Hades Society, or the Lu family. They were disciples of families within their sphere of influence. For example, the Palace of Ares was affiliated with the Palace of Blue Lions, which in turn was affiliated with the Lu family. The Palace of Ares had no direct relationship with the Lu family. But if Lu Hongyu gave the order, how could the Palace of Ares disobey? Yang Qiji and Ji Nu were not the top young masters of the major forces, and they were not as famous as Yang Xian and Ji Mingtian. That being said, it was not hard for them to gather warriors of their forces. Yang Qiji and Ji Nu were determined to capture Jiang Qiling. If they didn't, Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, Dai Fei Yu, Lu Xuan, and Lu and I would be in danger. Ji Nu was the warrior of the Ji family, hiding on the tree outside the cave. He was knocked out by Lu Li. When Ji Nu woke up, Ji Mingtian and the others were all missing. When Ji Nu returned to the base camp and heard that they were captured by Lu Li and could be killed at any time, he was sure that the information was true. Otherwise, Ji Mingtian and the others would not have disappeared for no reason. Boom, boom, boom. They surrounded Jiang Qiling and the others, releasing Xian energy, bloodline skills, and secret skills. But no one dared to come closer. Jiang Qiling and Jiang, whose soul feast butterflies were too powerful. Anyone who got too close would be killed immediately. The dozens of bodies at the foot of the mountain were still warm. Ji Nu's strategy was clear. He would kill Jiang Hu and the others with the advantage of numbers. When Jiang Qiling was injured, he would take her down. Naturally, he dared not to kill her. After all, she was the future chosen warrior. He knew that as long as he didn't kill her, nothing would go wrong. The Samsara Palace would shield him from the anger of the Pavilion of Delicacy, because he was trying to save Ji Mingtian. Besides, this time, there were not only people from the Samsara Palace, but also people from the Pavilion of Flowers, the Lu family, and the Hades Society. Would the Pavilion of Delicacy dare to offend all four forces at the same time? Buzzing, Ji Nu hid in a corner. A glare came from his neck. A black phoenix whooshed out toward Jiang Hu and the others. Watch out! Jiang Qiling looked over. Jiang Hu and the others came back to their senses and stepped back. But one of them failed and was hit by the phoenix. The man's body was ablaze with black flames. His body was corroded at a speed visible to the naked eye. The black phoenix was a bloodline skill unique to the Ji family. Not only could the black phoenix have a high temperature, but it also had a strange energy that could corrode the enemy's body. Even Jiang Qiling would be seriously injured if she was hit by the phoenix. Another one died. Jiang Qiling was furious. However, by the time she went to find Ji Nu, he had already left and snuck into the crowd. This man was more cunning than a fox. It would be hard to kill him. From the ridge came a miserable cry. Yang Qi made a sneak attack as well. He released some ghosts to entangle one warrior. That warrior could not dodge or defend himself. He had to take the Xian energy attacks from all sides. In the end, he was smashed into pieces. Lady, we can't waste any more time. Break out, and we will cover for you. A glint of determination rose in Jiang Hu's eyes. As long as Jiang Qiling could get out, he didn't mind dying. A black glare came out from his neck. The soul feast butterflies were flying all over the place, which scared the warriors away. Watch you die. You want me to run away alone? I am not that kind of person. Jiang Qiling wiped the blood off the corner of her mouth. She glanced around and said, "They don't have the courage to kill me. Follow me. You will have an easier time with me here. If you die, I will not run away. I swear I will kill them all. I'm not a human being until I kill them all. Charge!" Jiang Qiling bellowed. She released her bead of life and took the lead. Jiang Hu and the others made up their minds and released their bead of life to follow her. Swish, swish, at the front, Jiang Qiling released soul feast butterflies. At the same time, she created waves made of Xian energy. The waves surged forward like a raging sea, making many people run away in fear. Trying to break out? Ji Nu and Yang Qi looked at each other and sneered. They snuck into the crowd, ignoring Jiang Qiling and approaching Jiang Hu and the others. Go to hell! Ji Nu and Yang Qi released their bloodline skills at the same time and dashed toward Jiang Hu and the others. None of them attacked Jiang Qiling. As long as Jiang Hu and the others were dead, Jiang Qiling had nothing to fear. Oh no! Run! Jiang Hu dashed up to the sky in a curve. He reacted fast, but the others were slower. Two of them were covered by phoenixes, and the other three were entangled by ghosts. They could not defend themselves against the Xian energy attacks coming from all sides. Boom, 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 countless Xian energy attacks were launched. The remaining 5 all exploded. Jiang Qiling and Jiang, who brought dozens of people with them. But all of them were dead, except for the two of them. Charge! Jiang Qiling shouted in sorrow. She stopped running and dashed toward Jin Nu like a mad dragon. She didn't even try to dodge. She used the holy grade armor to shield herself from the Xian energy attacks. There was only one person in her eyes, and that was to cut Jin Nu into pieces. Ha ha ha! Jin Nu laughed and stepped back. If Jiang Qiling wanted to go after him, she must kill the dozens of people in front of her first. Attack Jiang Qiling. Whoever can capture her alive will be rewarded with 100 billion Xian crystals. Jin Nu shouted. His voice echoed in the wild. Stop! I will kill the entire family of anyone who dares to attack Jiang Qiling. Right at that moment, from the distance came a roar. Clearly, the roar came from Dragon Roar. It was like the roar of an ancient beast, hurting many people's eardrums and messing up their Xian energy. It is Lu Li, Jiang, who felt he had heard the most beautiful music in the world. Tears welled up in his eyes. He looked to where the sound came from with passion. Whoosh! Chapter 5:26. Lu Li was relieved to see that Jiang Qiling was still alive. If Jiang Qiling were to die, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. He wasted a day and a half in the barbarian race, and it was because of him that Jiang Qiling left the base camp. When he saw Jiang Qiling's pale face and the blood on her mouth and neck, Lu Li was filled with killing intent. He was even angrier than when Lu Xuan set him up. It was okay to harm him, but not to hurt his woman. Needless to say, Lu Li could tell that these warriors were doing this to Jiang Qiling because of him. Jiang Qiling was a future chosen warrior, and these warriors were just average disciples of different families. If it were not for saving Ji Mengtian, Yang Xian, and Dai Feiyu, how could they have the courage to do this? Lu Hongyu glanced at the crowd in the distance. Sensing the killing intent from Lu Li, she said in a hurry, Lu Li, show mercy. Some of them are from the Palace of Blue Lions and the Palace of Gods. What do I have to do with the Palace of Blue Lions and the Palace of Gods? Lu Li asked her back. I will kill you even if you are from the Lu family, let alone the Palace of Blue Lions and the Palace of Gods. Bang! Lu Li pushed Lu Hongyu and Yi Luo down. Then in a blur, there were dozens of Lu Li in midair. They unsheathed their sabers at the same time and dashed toward the more than 200 warriors in front of them. These warriors could not tell the difference between Lu Li's cloning skill. They were so scared to see dozens of Lu Li with killing intent. Lu Li was too famous. He defeated the allied forces of the 4 alien races and captured Ji Mengtian, Yang Xian, Lu Xuan, and Dai Feiyu. Ji Mengtian had a quasi-relic. How powerful was Lu Li? Buzzing. Soon, they witnessed Lu Li's abilities. His psychic power turned into thousands of golden needles of soul. The dozens in front of Lu Li were immobilized. Lu Li swung his saber, and 7 or 8 heads were cut off. Such a powerful soul attack. On the peak of a hill in the distance, Yi Luo could not help but exclaim, Hong Yu, the soul attack of your cousin can defeat warriors of the noble lord realm easily. Only those with powerful soul treasures can withstand it. Did your clan's grand elder teach him this? I'm not sure. Lu Hongyu shook her head and said, but it is also possible that Great Patriarch is living in seclusion at the Mount Inquiring to protect Lu Li. Maybe he secretly went to the northern desert to teach Lu Li's soul attacks. Sigh. Lu Hongyu couldn't bear to see 2 warriors of the Palace of Blue Lions being killed by Lu Li. She turned around, sighed, and said, everything about Lu Li is good, but he is too murderous. Even though the more than 200 people have committed unforgivable crimes, the Demon-Slaying Hall will hold Lu Li accountable for his brutal massacre. After all, it is forbidden for humans to kill each other in the small battlefield. Yi Luo smiled faintly and said, killing 1 person is a sin. Killing 10,000 is a hero. Killing 1,000,000 is a hero among heroes. Those old guys of the Demon-Slaying Hall all have blood on their hands. A man should kill, If someone is trying to kill you, I will kill them as well. I don't care. If it is 200 or 20,000, I will kill them all. Bah! Lu Hongyu spat and said angrily, Are you cursing me? If I were to be surrounded and you couldn't save me in time, wouldn't I have died for nothing? Even though she was blaming Yi Luo, Lu Hongyu was touched. Her eyes were sparkling and her cheeks were rosy. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Run! Many people panicked and started to run away. Luli was killing too fast. In the time for a few breaths, 30 or 40 people had been beheaded. Luli was unstoppable. None of them could survive one move from him. Anyone that got close to him was killed easily. 3 of them saw how fast Luli was and knew it was pointless to run. They knelt on the ridge and shouted to Luli, Young Master Li, we are from the Palace of Blue Lions. Our father knows Lord Renwang. I hope you can be generous and spare us this time. You know my father? Luli glanced over with his bloodshot eyes and said with a cold smile, Since you know my father, then you deserve to die. Don't tell me you don't know the relationship between Jiang Qiling and me. You know we are related, but you still want to kill her. Don't you deserve to die? Whoosh! With that said, Luli used his golden needles of psychic power and swept his divine weapon of Dragon King. 3 heads flew away with their eyes wide open. They died with everlasting regret. Relationship? On hearing this, Jiang Qiling blushed. Luli was basically saying that she was his woman in public. Jiang Qiling felt shy and happy at the same time. Young lady, let's step back. Jiang Hu flew over and stood next to Jiang Qiling. Even though everyone had run away, this was still a battlefield. What if someone decided to take the risk? No. Jiang Qiling kept her eyes on Luli. She said with a gentle smile, Luli is here. Nobody can hurt us now. All right. Jiang Hu stood next to Jiang Qiling. Looking into her gentle eyes, he felt sadness and pain in his heart. He had been in love with this pearl of the Pavilion of Delicacy for 3 years. Before he could confess, he had fallen out of love. But when he saw Luli dashing into the crowd like a tiger coming down from the mountains and slaughtering them, he felt it was reasonable. Only someone like Luli could be a good match for Jiang Qiling. The time for half an incense stick to burn. In the time for just half an incense stick to burn, more than half of the more than 200 people were killed. The rest fled to all directions. Luli looked at Jiang Qiling and started to chase after her. He had been suppressing his anger and wanted to vent it on Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian, but he had to let them go because of the circumstances. Now, he could vent his anger on the more than 200 people. Luli was so fast that even those who ran away at the beginning caught up with him in a moment. Nobody dared to fight back, nor could they. Before they could fight back, Lu Li's soul attack had arrived. Luli had made up his mind that he would kill everyone that was involved in this. That being said, he had underestimated the abilities of some people. There were several caves nearby. Ji Nu and Yang Qi had snuck into the caves and disappeared. 2 hours later, Luli came back. He didn't know how many people he had killed, but it should be more than 200. Some managed to escape, about 20 or 30. Luli was worried that Jiang Qiling wouldn't go after them. Jiang Qiling, Jiang Hu, Yi Luo, and Lu Hongyu were still waiting near the battlefield. Seeing Luli coming back with guilt, Jiang Qiling smiled and hopped onto Luli's fate wheel. Luli put his arms around Jiang Qiling and said, I'm sorry that I am late. You have suffered. I am not. Jiang Qiling sighed, shook her head and said, But it is a shame for my followers. Dozens of them died. Luckily, you have avenged them. Some escaped. Luli said with pity and added, Don't worry. As long as they dare to show up, I will kill them. The gate will open in a month. They have to go out, right? Go out? Jiang Qiling must have gotten some information from Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu. She sighed again and said, It is easy, but I don't think the demon-slaying city will be peaceful. Luli, you have put Ji Mingtian and the others in such a miserable state. When they get out, they will turn the world upside down. Upside down? Luli sneered and said, If their families dare to do so, then let them stay in the ding of Barbarian God for the rest of their lives. If they piss me off, I will make the ding of Barbarian God explode and kill them all. P.S. It is the Mid-Autumn Festival. I have to attend to many guests, and I am exhausted. I managed to squeeze out 4 chapters. Let's call it a day. I don't know how many chapters one will write tomorrow because I have to drive to my mother-in-law's place, and it will take me 7 or 8 hours to go. I will try my best. Chapter 5:27. This is the ding of barbarian god. Inside a small hill, Jiang Qiling was leaning on Lu Li, looking at him taking out the ding of barbarian god with curiosity. Lu Li nodded and said with a smile, "Try to use psychic power." "Ha, ha, those that schemed against us are all in there." Jiang Qiling's eyes glowed. Her pale cheeks blushed. She checked with psychic power and soon, she was stunned. Lu Li. Jiang Qiling looked at Lu Li with mixed feelings. She felt she had vented her anger, but at the same time, she could not bear it, and she was worried. Lu Li had tortured them so badly that they didn't even look like human beings, not to mention a bunch of famous young masters and young ladies of the Central Plains. "Ha ha." Lu Li smiled and said, "You don't know this, but I was almost killed by them again. If I didn't have the ding of barbarian god, I would have been killed even if Yi Luo had helped me." "Ah." Jiang Qiling asked Yi Luo about Lu Hongyu, but Yi Luo didn't say anything. Last time he came back, he only said that Lu Li had captured Ji Mengtian and the others, and they could be killed at any time. But he didn't say why Lu Li captured them. She asked for details. When Lu Li finished, the sympathy in her eyes disappeared. She said with hatred, "Those people are evil. Lu Li, you are right to punish them. Keep on with thunderbolts. I want to see them hovering between life and death." Ha ha ha. Lu Li was amused to see Jiang Qiling acting like a little devil. He looked at Little White on his shoulder and said, "Release electric arcs, the kind that can't stop. Hit them." Squeak, squeak, Little White grinned and screamed. Then its horns glowed, and the ding of barbarian god was turned upside down. "Not again. Lu Li, you son of a bitch. Are you done yet?" "Young Master Lu, I am sorry. I am really sorry." "Stop." The ding of barbarian god was in a mess. They had rested for a few days and recovered some energy. But to their surprise, thunderbolts came again. Boom! Yang Xian was about to swear when an electric arc hit him. He trembled and fell to the ground, twitching. His eyes rolled up, and he foamed at the mouth as if he was having an epileptic fit. Ji Mengtian and the others were not spared either. Once again, they began to enjoy the hellish torture. Ha ha ha! Jiang Qiling was overjoyed to see what was going on inside. All the anger she had been holding back was released. She yelled in excitement, "Go on. Yang Xian and Lu and I still dare to curse you. Go against them." Lu Li gave the ding of barbarian god to her so that she could play with it. He put Little White down from his shoulder and patted its head. Xiaobai closed her eyes comfortably. Lu Li asked after some thoughts, "Little White, have you consumed all the divine energy in you?" Little White opened its eyes and nodded. Lu Li was speechless and asked, "Then why are you still so young? Are you going to be this big forever?" Little White rolled its eyes like a human. Jiang Qiling checked for a while and found it boring. She gave the ding of barbarian god back to Lu Li and said, "Okay, that's enough. Don't really kill them." Lu Li put the ding of barbarian god aside and said with a smile, "I can't. Last time, I did it for 8 days and 8 nights, and they didn't die. Let them enjoy for a while." Seeing that Lu Li was confident, Jiang Qiling didn't say anything else. She looked at Little White with curiosity and asked, "How come Little White is controlling the ding of barbarian god? You didn't do it?" Lu Li thought about it and explained, "I can't. That belongs to the barbarian race. Little White must have some divine energy to be able to control the ding of barbarian god." Jiang Qiling patted Little White's fur and praised, "Little White is impressive. I think it is no weaker than an 8th rank beast king. When it grows up, it will be able to fight against powerful warriors of the earth immortal realm." Hearing Jiang Qiling's praise, Little White raised its head proudly. Its arrogance was asking for a beating. Lu Li patted Little White's head affectionately and said, "Little White is impressive. It even took Ji Mengtian's quasi-relic." Ah, Jiang Qiling was even more shocked. She looked at Little White with admiration. Little White raised its head even higher. Qiling. Luli looked at Jiang Qiling with a straight face and said, "You gave me the divine energy and your soul is injured. Will it affect your future cultivation? You are the chosen warrior in the future. But because of me, alas, all the divine energy was absorbed by my soul pond. Otherwise, I could have thought of a way to give it back to you." Silly. Jiang Qiling shook her head with a smile and said, "I don't think the divine energy is of much use. It is so little, and it will be gone after I use it. What Emperor of Heaven Reverse gave me is not only divine energy. There is something else that I cannot explain. I feel that if I can understand that thing, my abilities will be enhanced by leaps and bounds. As for the damage to the soul, the Pavilion of Delicacy has many high-level mystical materials. I can recover easily when I go back." "I see." Luli felt less guilty. He asked with curiosity, "Then what is it that you can't explain? Profound meaning?" "Maybe." Jiang Qiling blinked with confusion and said, "If it is profound meaning, I think it is at least of the 7th or 8th rank. But I don't think it is profound meaning. It might be something more powerful." Lu Li's heart skipped a beat. He grabbed Jiang Qiling's hands and said, "Then when you go back, you must cultivate hard. When you become a chosen warrior, I can be your toy boy and live off you." Uffed. Jiang Qiling rolled her eyes. She squinted at Lu Li and said, "When I wanted to live off you, didn't you have the guts to say no? You're like a donkey. You won't walk when you are led, and you will retreat when you are beaten. Things are different now." Lu Li pretended to be upset and said, "I have lost my chastity to you. I am yours now. That is a fact. Why can't I live off you?" Jiang Qiling's cheeks blushed. She said angrily, "You pervert." Ha ha ha. Lu Li was amused to see that Jiang Qiling was different from before. She had become shy when talking about these things. Suddenly, he put his hand on her chest and said, "You call me a pervert? I will show you what I am." Jiang Qiling felt weak under Lu Li's sneak attack. She grabbed Lu Li's hand to stop him from messing around and punched him several times with her other hand. She said angrily, "Do you want to die? How can I face people when they see me in broad daylight? That is not good." Lu Li took his hand back and said with a straight face, "Don't you have the Tower of Delicacy? Take it out now. Let's go into the Tower of Delicacy. Last time, I lost my chastity in a daze. It was not worth it. This time, I want to get back at you." "Pervert." Jiang Qiling flew away like a frightened rabbit. She flew to another hill before she turned around, stuck her tongue out, made a face, and said, "Lu Li, I'm going back to the base camp. I will not let you have your way." Ha ha ha. Lu Li laughed. Jiang Qiling had not recovered yet. Naturally, he wouldn't do something so beastly. He was just joking. He put away the ding of barbarian god, took Little White with him, and shouted to the distance, "Young Master Yi, Sister Hong Yu, Jiang who has left. He's going back to the base camp. P.S. I wrote this chapter in my notebook in the countryside. I will go home after dinner. I can't update today, so I asked for a day off for the Mid-Autumn Festival. I will write 5 chapters tomorrow." Chapter 528. There are not many people in the base camp, only 2 or 3,000. The rest of the warriors had gone out to hunt alien races. Because of Lu Li, many alien races didn't dare to leave the base camp. Therefore, the human race was at an absolute advantage. How could they let go of such a good chance? They were not here to have fun, but to gain points and experience. But there were still warriors from the affiliated forces of the 4 forces guarding the base camp. When Lu Li came back, the warriors of the 4 forces were stirred up and they gathered around. "What?" Lu Li held Jiang Qiling's hand, glanced over to the more than 100 warriors and said, "Do you want to make trouble?" There weren't many warriors from the Ji family, Yang family, Lu family, and the Dai family. There were only a few of them, and they seemed to be collateral disciples. The others were from the affiliated forces. Lu Li was so famous that some of the warriors didn't dare to look into his eyes when he glanced at them. They looked at each other and nobody dared to step forward. In the end, a disciple of a collateral disciple of the Ji family made up his mind and said, "Young Master Lu, where is our young lady? She has legs, and she can walk on her own. How'd I know where she is?" Lu Li answered coldly and made up some nonsense. "I have heard a rumor these days. It is said that your young lady went to the base camp of the Asmodeans and never came out. Maybe she has become the princess of a prince of the Asmodeans." Bulsh asterisk T. The warrior of the Ji family was about to swear, but he shut up when he saw the killing intent in Lu Li's eyes. He hesitated and said, "Young Master Lu, our young lady, young Master Swan, young Master Xian, and young Lady Fei Yu have been missing for more than 10 days. If you did take them, please let them go. It will not be good for anyone if this gets out of hand. Ji Mengtian, Yang Xian, Lu Swan, and Dai Fei Yu have been missing for more than 10 days. Many people have been looking for them, but to no avail. On top of that, Yi Luo spread the news that Lu Li had taken 5 people. Everyone believed it without a doubt. Buzzing, Lu Li used his psychic power to scan over this warrior and the others nearby. Lu Li mobilized his Xian energy and kicked the warrior of the Ji family away. He and the other 2 warriors behind him were kicked away. Then Lu Li glanced over to the others coldly and said, "Get lost. I will break your legs if you dare to pester me endlessly again. If your family's young masters and young mistresses are missing, go look for them yourselves. I'm not their father, so it's none of my business." That being said, that warrior of the Ji family was at the later stage of the Noble Lord realm, and yet he could not even survive one move from Lu Li, who dared to court humiliation. The display of Lu Li's abilities had shocked everyone. However, they were even more certain that Ji Mengtian, Yang Xian, and the others were captured by him. Jiang Qiling was the kind of person who wished for the world to be in chaos. Her pale face put on a smile. She felt happy when she thought of how miserable Ji Mengtian and the others were in the Ding of Barbarian God. She glared at the group and said, "Lu Li, don't waste your time talking to them. I will break the legs of anyone who dares to stand in our way." Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu were following behind her. They looked at each other and forced a smile. Yi Luo had a better understanding of Lu Li's character now. He knew that Lu Li would be angered if they continued to surround him. Yi Luo waved his hand and said, "Go." Yi Luo was more prestigious than Lu Li. The others had to make up their minds and leave when he said so. Lu Li swaggered back to their base camp with Jiang Qiling. Jiang, who glanced over the crowd to see if there were any of the ones that tried to kill them that day. He couldn't find them after a long time. It seemed that the more than 20 that ran away didn't dare to go back to their base camp. There was still a month to go to the demon-slaying city. Lu Li had nothing to do. He had killed enough alien races, and there were too few of them out there. He couldn't get many points unless he went to the base camps of the alien races. Lu Li didn't have the guts to kill his way into the base camps of the 4 alien races. There were inhibition formations in the base camps of the alien races. Warriors that weren't from their own races would be suppressed. Lu Li didn't want to court death. Lu Li stayed with Jiang Qiling every day to make up for his guilt. Yi Luo didn't go out as well. He stayed near Lu Hongyu's tent every day. Unfortunately, Lu Hongyu was sometimes cold to him and sometimes warm to him, sometimes close and sometimes distant, which upset him. Several days later, Lu Lin came back. More warriors of the 4 forces came back after receiving news. They didn't dare to make trouble for Lu Li. They went to beg Yi Luo, Lu Lin, and Lu Hongyu to persuade them to let Ji Mengtian and the others go. Let them go. After hearing Lu Lin's words, Lu Li raised his eyebrows and said, "Lu Lin, are you stupid? If I let them go now, I will be asking for trouble. Will Yang Xian, Ji Mengtian, and Lu Swan bury the hatchet? What if they come with a bunch of warriors to kill me? Will you help me? Even if you can, what if they get out of the demon-slaying city and find powerful warriors of other families to kill me or capture me? How can I explain myself? These people are my protective talismans. I won't let them go until I'm sure that they're absolutely safe." Lu Lin was persuaded by some disciples of a branch of the Lu family. He was afraid that things would get out of hand, so he came to persuade Lu Li. After hearing Lu Li's explanation, Lu Lin thought about it for a while. He seemed to be in a dilemma. If Lu Li didn't let them go, things would get out of hand. The four forces would not let it go when they were out of the demon-slaying city. But if Lu Li let them go now, Ji Mingtian and Lu Xuan would seek revenge. By then, things would get out of hand. Lu Li was in a dilemma. Jiang Qiling frowned. She looked at Lu Li with worry. Lu Li smiled gently, held her hands and said, "Don't worry. They're in my hands, so I have the leverage to negotiate. As long as my great-grandpa is impartial, I don't think the situation will be too bad. What is more, you, the future chosen warrior, will be on my side. The demon-slaying hall will save you some face." Jiang Qiling thought about it, and her frown disappeared. She decided to leave it at that. She would see when the time came. Lu Li used psychic power to check. Many people were waiting for news. He waved his hand impatiently and said, "Lu Lin, tell those people to piss off. I will break their legs if they piss me off. Also, get Yi Luo here." Lu Lin walked out. After a while, he came back with Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu. Lu Li cut to the chase and said, "I wanted to go back to the base camp and enjoy a few days of leisure. The people outside are annoying. How about we go and get some points? There aren't many alien races out there." Yi Luo raised his eyebrows. A glow flickered in his eyes, and he said, "You want to attack the base camp of the 4 alien races? I don't have that kind of ability." Lu Li shook his head and said with a forced smile, "But we can organize a group of people and wait outside the base camp. Then we can send someone to provoke the alien races inside and lure them out to kill us." Yi Luo was surprised. He looked at Lu Hongyu and Lu Lin. Their eyes glowed. This was a good idea. Most importantly, with Lu Li there, they could defeat the alien races even if they sent out their armies. They wouldn't be in too much danger. Okay, we still have more than 20 days before the teleportation portal opens. Let's go and kill some first. Let's go to the nearest base camp of the Asmodeans. It will be best if we can lure the prince of the Asmodeans to death. Yi Luo was a decisive man. He went out with Lu Hongyu to gather more warriors. Yi Luo enjoyed high prestige. Lu Li was leading the team in person. Many warriors of small families would be willing to go with him to earn points. There were 2,000 or 3,000 warriors in the base camp. Many of them were from small families that had nothing to do with the 4 forces. In just 2 hours, Yi Luo had gathered nearly 1,000 warriors. Chapter 529. The terrain of the small battlefield was actually not suitable for large armies to march and fight. If there were too many people, the formation would be stretched very long, and the target would be very large. It would be easy for the 4 races to join forces and kill them. However, things are different now. The 4 alien races had all retreated, and many alien races were hiding in their bases. There were not many alien races outside, and even if a small group of them came to attack, it would not be a big deal. The base camp of the Asmodeans was not far away. If Lu Li flew at the top of his speed, it would only take him 4 to 5 days. However, they were leading 1,000 people, and half of them were only at the imperishable realm. It was inevitable that their marching speed would be slowed down. Along the way, they were ambushed by more than a dozen alien squads, and dozens of people died. 12 days later, the army finally arrived near the demon race's headquarters. There was no flat land near the base camp of the demon race. The base camp was located in a huge mountain range. Lu Li asked the army to stop in a huge mountain 100 miles away from the base camp of the Asmodeans. "Everyone listen up." Lu Li flew up on his fate wheel, and so did Yi Luo, Lu Hongyu, Lu Lin, and Jiang Qiling. Looking down at them, Lu Li said, "You all know how cruel the Asmodeans are. Their attacks are unpredictable and their whereabouts are unpredictable. Of course, we have absolute confidence that we can defeat the invading devil army. Even if all the devils in the headquarters come out, we will still be able to defeat them. Your mission is to kill the fleeing Asmodeans after we defeat them. You must listen to Jiang Qiling and Lu Hongyu. Otherwise, don't blame us if you die." Along the way, Luli discussed with Yi Luo, Lu Hongyu, and Lu Lin. They asked the humans to form groups of 4 or 5 to a team. They would work together to attack and defend. It shouldn't be a problem for 4 or 5 to deal with one Asmodean. Lu Li and Yi Luo were in charge of the attack, while Lu Lin was in charge of support. Jiang Qiling had not recovered, yet so Lu Li asked her and Lu Hongyu to command the army. 1,000 people formed groups of 4 or 5 and hid in the nearby mountains. 2 layers of encirclement were set up in the north, south, east, and west to prevent the devils from escaping. It was like a pocket, waiting for the enemy to fall into it. Yi Luo, I'll leave this place to you. I'm leaving. Lu Li looked around, and then turned to Yi Luo, who nodded. Lu Li flew toward the base camp of the Asmodeans on his own. Lu Li took on the task of luring out the Asmodeans. It was dangerous. Even Lu Lin might not make it back alive. Lu Li was resourceful and fast. He was the most suitable candidate. Lu Li didn't release his fate wheel. He carried the divine weapon of Dragon King on his back and slowly made his way to the base camp of the Asmodeans. He used his psychic power to check for Asmodeans hiding nearby. There must be Asmodeans scouts outside the base camp. 30 miles later, Lu Li had already found 3 Asmodeans. Lu Li's psychic power was strong, so the Asmodeans hadn't noticed him yet. He pretended not to notice the 3 Asmodeans and pressed on. Not long afterward, 3 Asmodeans noticed Lu Li. They sneaked up from underground, trying to assassinate Lu Li. Clearly, the 3 Asmodeans did not know Lu Li. They hid for a while and dashed out from underground at the same time. Then, they dashed out from under Lu Li's feet. Bang, bang, bang. The mud and stones cracked as 3 people flew out. 3 glowing, poisonous stingers were coming at Lu Li from 3 different directions. Lu Li had been sensing the movements underground. His psychic power surged out and struck at the soul pawns of the 2 Asmodeans. He drew the divine weapon of Dragon King from his back and hacked at the stinger of one Asmodean, knocking it away. Then, he hacked at the heads of the other 2 Asmodeans that were frightened by his soul power. Bang, bang. 2 heads were crushed. Lu Li didn't go after the Asmodean he smashed away. He turned around and ran away with fear written all over his face. Ah, woo. The remaining Asmodean didn't dare to go after Lu Li after witnessing the tragic death of his 2 companions. The Asmodean screamed for reinforcements while he followed Lu Li from a distance in case Lu Li ran away. Good. Hearing the scout scream, Lu Li knew he had successfully lured out the enemies. Now, it was up to him to see how many Asmodeans he could lure out. He seemed to be running in a hurry, but he was not fast. He didn't even take out his fate wheel. His purpose was self-evident. He was waiting for the Asmodeans to catch up. From a distance came some shrill noises. Lu Li looked back and saw many dark shadows rushing over from the mountains. He was overjoyed but nervous at the same time. He was not afraid of the Asmodeans himself, but he was worried that the human race would not be well prepared and many would die. Whoosh! Lu Li heard some noises behind him. Clearly, some powerful Asmodeans were catching up. He sped up in case the Asmodeans in front of him could catch up with him. In this way, he could not lure the Asmodeans into the encirclement. Lu Li secretly checked with psychic power and relaxed a bit. There were only 400 or 500 Asmodeans coming after him. He should be able to finish them off easily. The location of the ambush was only 30 miles away. Lu Li sped up, and in the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, he was inside the ambush. He didn't take action right away. Instead, he pressed on. When almost all the Asmodeans were in the encirclement, he stopped. His fate wheel appeared. He flew up and shouted, Yi Luo, here they are. The encirclement was a pocket. Yi Luo stood at the opening of the pocket with more than a dozen warriors after Lu Li's shout, sealing off the encirclement. Whoosh, whoosh, Yi Luo's neck glowed. A small black sword whooshed out and dashed toward a group of Asmodeans from behind. Yi Luo had used his most powerful skill, the bloodline skill, killing swords. The other more than a dozen Asmodeans did the same, aiming at the back of the Asmodeans. Go to hell. Lu Li turned around and began to fight back. Little White was on his shoulder. The Asmodeans were afraid to get close. Lu Li's psychic power turned into thousands of golden needles and enveloped dozens of Asmodeans. There were not many powerful Asmodeans. Even those powerful Asmodeans didn't have treasures to protect their souls. Their soul pawns were pierced by Lu Li's soul attack. Bang, bang, bang. Lu Li generated dozens of clones. He dashed into the Asmodeans and began his slaughter. More black swords came from behind. Dozens of Asmodeans were hit, and the swords exploded, injuring many Asmodeans. In the time for a few breaths, Yi Luo and Lu Li had killed nearly 100 Asmodeans. The Asmodeans were thrown into chaos. Charge! Jiang Qiling and Lu Hongyu gave the order to launch an all-out attack. There were not many Asmodeans. Lu Li and Yi Luo worked together to defeat them. The Asmodeans lost their morale and fled to all directions. If the human warriors couldn't kill the remaining Asmodeans, then the 1,000 Asmodeans would be useless. Charge! From all sides came shouts. Many human warriors swarmed over in excitement. They formed teams of 4 or 5 and attacked one Asmodean. The fleeing Asmodeans were scared out of their wits. Yi Luo, Lu Lin, go to the periphery and stop the Asmodeans from escaping underground. Lu Li yelled, seeing that the outcome was settled. It was not a big deal to kill the remaining Asmodeans. What they were afraid of was letting the Asmodeans escape. Many Asmodeans could burrow underground. Average human warriors could hardly kill the Asmodeans underground. Yi Luo, Lu Lin, and the more than a dozen noble Lord Realm warriors would have to count on. Lu Li slaughtered for a while more. When he had the situation under control, he rushed toward the base camp of the Asmodeans as fast as he could on his fate wheel. He used psychic power to check for any escaped Asmodeans. Once some Asmodeans got back to the base camp, they would be able to tell that there was an ambush here. Next time, it would not be so easy to lure the Asmodeans out. Chapter 530. Lu Li and Yi Luo had made some preparations so that none of the Asmodeans could escape. They were right to be cautious. Lu Li found more than a dozen Asmodeans along the way. After he launched soul attacks, he stabbed the divine weapon of Dragon King into the ground and killed them all. He wandered around the base camp of the Asmodeans for 2 hours. He wondered if any Asmodeans had escaped back to the base camp. After all, many Asmodeans could burrow into the ground. He flew back to the human army. The battle had long since ended, and the results of the battle had been tallied. The human side had lost nearly 100 people, while the demon side had killed nearly 500 people. Lu Li shook his head. He and Yi Luo had killed more than 200 Asmodeans in total. 1,000 human warriors killed more than 200 Asmodeans and nearly 100 humans. That being said, humans were generally not strong and didn't have powerful bloodline skills. Half of them were at the Eternal Realm. It was understandable that the Asmodeans' attacks were strange and cruel. The human army was extremely excited. This time, the entire army was moving together, so the battle merits would definitely be distributed. Even if Lu Li and Yi Luo took the biggest share, everyone else would get some. If it were their teams, they might not even be able to survive, let alone kill so many Asmodeans. They could brag about this victory for years when they went back. Their status and their families would rise as well. Lu Li said nothing for a while. He glanced over to everyone and said, "Some of the Asmodeans might have escaped back. If we want to go on, we must strike while the iron is hot and lure them over. Think about it. Do you want to go on, or do you want to give up and go back to the base camp?" "Go on." Many people shouted. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The Asmodeans were the most ferocious and difficult to kill. If they had to fight on their own, how could they achieve such a great result? If they could gain more points this time, they could go back to their families and make a name for themselves. As for death, as soon as they entered the small battlefield, they had to put their lives on the line. It was because of Lu Li that humans gained the upper hand at the small battlefield. Otherwise, there would have been more casualties. Of course, some were scared. After all, many of their friends who were alive and kicking had become dead bodies. Everyone wanted points, but they were afraid of death. Death would mean nothing. The thing was, most of them were shouting in excitement. A small number of them were too embarrassed to do so. If they left now, they would definitely be laughed at later. Thus, none of them spoke, and none of them left. All right, then there's no time to lose. I'll lure another batch of devils over. Seeing that nobody left, Luli nodded to Jiang Qiling and Yiluo and said, "Clean up the battlefield and make arrangements. I will go to the base camp of the Asmodeans and have a look." Luli left on his own. Yiluo, Jiang Qiling, Lu Hongyu, and the others busied themselves. They ordered others to move the bodies away and bury the blood. Then they split up and hid. Luli didn't know if there were any Asmodeans that had escaped. He didn't want to waste too much time. After all, 500 Asmodeans would go after him. If they didn't come back for a long time, they would attract the attention of the Asmodeans in the base camp. He snuck into the vicinity of the base camp alone and found a few more scouts. He killed 3 scouts and let one go before sneaking away. However, this time, the scout did not let out a shrill whistle, nor did he call for help. Instead, he charged towards the main camp. Luli's mind was weighed down. Had the Asmodeans learned to be smart this time? Or the worst-case scenario had come. Some of the Asmodeans had escaped back, and they knew that there was an ambush. Luli had to go to the base camp of the Asmodeans and find out what was going on. More than 3 miles later, he arrived at the base camp of the Asmodeans. He saw on the peak of a mountain stood many castles. But many castles were destroyed. It seemed that some humans had broken into the base camp of the Asmodeans. There were many Asmodeans in the base camp. As far as the eye could see, there were at least 3,000 or 4,000 of them. Luli had to wait patiently since the scout had gone in. After a while, the Asmodeans made a move. More than 10 came out and dashed toward Luli. Luli thought he had been spotted, but he could tell that the more than 10 were not powerful. They must be scouts. Okay, Luli was more confident now. None of the Asmodeans had escaped back, and they didn't notice any ambush from the human side. The scout must have recognized Luli. The Asmodeans had sent out more than a dozen to find out what was going on. Whoosh! Luli swaggered out. His chi and energy surged out, and his fate will came out. He generated dozens of clones and dashed toward the more than a dozen Asmodeans. What? As soon as Luli showed up, the base camp of the Asmodeans was in an uproar. Seeing how Luli killed more than a dozen Asmodeans without any scruples, the base camp was in an uproar. Human, it is that human. This human is so bold. He has the guts to come to our base camp alone. Go and report to Prince Naga. Yes, go and report to the prince. Let's chop this human into pieces. Bastard human, you have crossed the line. How dare you kill our people outside our base camp? Chop him. From the base camp came more curses. Luli was not surprised that the Asmodeans could speak the human language. After killing the more than a dozen Asmodeans that came out, Luli landed on the ground. He stepped on the bodies of 2 Asmodeans, pointed his saber at the base camp of the Asmodeans, and shouted with dragon roar, "Asmodeans, I am here. Who dares to come out and fight me?" Dragon roar was a horrifying skill. It stirred up a gust of wind and shook the space. His voice was so loud that it could be heard in an area with a radius of more than 30 miles. Some Asmodeans' eardrums were ringing. Luli resorted to the same trick. He provoked the Asmodeans in public, hoping that he could lure out a group of Asmodeans and bring them to the encirclement. However, the Asmodeans were not as impulsive as the barbarians. Luli shouted, but no Asmodeans came out. Whoosh, whoosh, from the center of the base camp, several people flew out. Luli saw a half-naked Asmodean in black pants surrounded by several powerful Asmodeans. The Asmodean was short and skinny. The Asmodean had a saber in his hand that was glistening in a faint red glow. Royal Asmodean. Luli had seen this Royal Asmodean before. Pointing his saber at the Royal Asmodean, Luli shouted again, "Prince of Asmodeans? Do you dare to come out and fight me? If not, go back to the eastern land of oceans. Don't come out and embarrass yourself." The Asmodeans were boiling again. Many Asmodeans were swearing. but none dared to come out without the prince's order. Courting death. In front of a group of demons, this demon prince felt very humiliated. If he endured such provocation and didn't do anything, then he wouldn't be able to do anything. He would be mocked by many Asmodeans if he went back to the eastern land of oceans. His status among the royal Asmodeans would be affected as well. Therefore, the Asmodean prince thought for a while, made up his mind, waved his hand and shouted, "Move out. I, Naga, will reward anyone that can kill this human." Woo-woo, Prince Naga gave his order. All the Asmodeans swarmed out. Luli saw at least 3,000 or 4,000. He curled his lips and said to himself that he had gone too far. Of the 3,000 or 4,000 Asmodeans, Luli only had less than 1,000. If he were to bring all of them over, it would be hard to say who would be the one being killed. Let's go. Now that the Asmodeans had been lured out, Luli would not let them go. He generated dozens of clones and flew toward Yiluo. Naturally, he could not bring so many Asmodeans into the encirclement. He had a fight nearby. When the fight was almost over, he would let the human army make their move. Chapter 531. Luli flew at the top of his speed. Even so, dozens of Asmodeans caught up with him. The Asmodeans had a strange ability that allowed them to speed up for a short period of time. Clearly, the dozens of Asmodeans were powerful Asmodeans. Luli flew for about 30 miles. He didn't dare to move forward anymore. If the humans sensed what was going on, Jiang Qiling would order an army to attack for fear that something would happen to him, which would cost the lives of many. Prince Naka of the Asmodeans was not among the dozens. Clearly, he was afraid of being killed by Luli as well. Luli generated clones again. This time, he didn't run away. Instead, he dashed toward the dozens of Asmodeans. Buzzing with a gentle breeze, Luli released his soul attack. He enveloped the dozens of Asmodeans in one go. 4 of them have treasures to protect their souls. Luli noticed that the golden needles of psychic power could not penetrate into the 4 Asmodeans. If he were to attack the others, the 4 of them would attack him. He could lose his life here, but if he didn't attack, he would have to run away. The dozens of Asmodeans that were shocked by his soul would wake up soon. By then, he wouldn't be able to kill even one of them. "Little White, get ready," Luli murmured to Little White. He had to take the risk. He took out his divine weapon of Dragon King and swung it at 4 or 5 Asmodeans. 4 Asmodeans were beheaded. The other 4 Asmodeans that had treasures to protect their souls saw where Luli was. Killing intent surged in their eyes. With a black glare, they sped up and dashed toward Luli. Wu, one of the Asmodeans, waved his truncheon. It was pitch dark. There were ghosts everywhere, howling and screaming. Surges of strange energy surged toward Luli's soul pond. This was a special skill of the Asmodeans. It contained some soul attacks and could bewitch people. The silver dragon mark on Luli's soul pond glowed to protect his soul. The energy could not seep into his soul pond. Hoi! Luli swung his saber again and killed another 4 or 5 Asmodeans. 2 more Asmodeans released their poisonous stingers, glowing and fast. Luli could only focus on one enemy, since the enemies were fast, and they were flanking him from the left and the right. Also, there were defensive treasures in his soul. His divine will transformed into 10 sharp divine will blades that locked onto the devil on the right and slashed down heavily on the devil's head. At the same time, he shouted, "Little White, I'll leave the devils here to you." Squeak, squeak, Little White let out a careless cry. After Luli waved his sleeve, Little White flew away in a blur. The reason why it had turned into black light was because its entire body was still charred black. White fur had not grown out yet. What is it? A demon on the left saw a flash of black light and instinctively swung its stinger to stab the black light. Sparks flew as its poisonous stinger rubbed against White E's body. When the stinger stabbed into White E's body, it felt like stabbing into an iron plate. Squeak, squeak, Little White climbed up the demon's poisonous stinger and bit the demon's wrist. The speed at which it gnawed was too fast. In just a breath's time, that devil's hand had turned into a skeleton. That devil didn't even feel any pain. The devil howled in pain and suddenly flung his hand, wanting to shake off Whitey. His hand was only left with bones, and he almost fainted from the pain. By the time he came back to his senses, Little White had jumped onto his shoulder and bit at his neck. "Little White, well done," Luli shouted. He was finally able to put his mind at ease. What he was worried about the most was Little White's defense. He was relieved to see that the poisonous stinger could not get in. Little White had been bombarded by divine thunderbolts for 7 days and 7 nights. Now that it had been transformed by divine energy, Little White's defense had reached a horrifying level. Little White's attacks were ferocious and it was fast. Little White was strong in all aspects. Its abilities should be no weaker than that of a beast king. Go to hell. Little White was fine now. Luli's sharp knife of psychic power pierced through the Asmodean's soul protection treasure. The Asmodean paused for a moment. Luli hacked at the Asmodean's head and cut it into pieces. Hiss, hiss, there were 2 other devils nearby who had soul defenses, and they gasped. Their eyes flickered, and they didn't dare to rush forward. Charge! Luli had no more concerns. He pointed at another powerful Asmodean with his saber and released soul attack again. Squeak, squeak, Little White was excited to be praised by Luli. It dashed toward another Asmodean. For Little White, these Asmodeans were no different from low-level shin beasts. It could kill them at will. Hoi! Luli swung the divine weapon of Dragon King and hacked at the head of an Asmodean. Right at that moment, the space behind him suddenly trembled. Then a stinger came. A gust of coldness enveloped Luli. The killing intent alerted Luli in his soul. Blood claw, Luli snorted. The blood claw appeared on his right hand, and he scratched at the stinger. The stinger was crushed. The blood claw moved forward and crushed the head of an Asmodean that poked out from the sky. Boom! Luli used the divine weapon of Dragon King to hack at the head of a powerful Asmodean with soul protection treasure. Luli was relieved. He controlled his fate wheel and began to kill the dozens of Asmodeans whose souls had been shocked. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Luli and Little White killed 2 powerful Asmodeans with soul protection treasures. It had only been the time for a few breaths. The Asmodeans in the distance hadn't caught up yet. Prince Naga and the others at the front were still more than 3 miles away. Whoosh, whoosh, more Asmodeans were approaching. Naga stopped a couple of miles away and ordered the Asmodeans to surround Luli, trying to kill him. Luli didn't mind. He just let the Asmodeans surround him. It would be too easy for him to break out of the encirclement. He could kill his way out. What was more, with Little White's help, he was confident that he could defeat the Asmodeans even if he didn't run. Little White, be careful. Luli killed several Asmodeans with his saber and said to Little White that was dashing toward the Asmodeans. Little White raised its head and screamed. Luli saw Little White jump from one Asmodean's shoulder to another. Blood gushed out from the neck of the Asmodean, and the latter fell. Occasionally, a wand or a stinger would land on Little White, but every time, there would be sparks or Little White would be smashed away. Little White's defensive ability was so strong that the Asmodeans could not hurt it. Beast King, Naga noticed that every time Little White moved, there would be an Asmodean bitten to death. Naga's expressions changed. Only a Beast King could explain Little White's abilities. However, Little White did not have the might and energy of a Beast King. A real Beast King's energy was horrifying. A roar from dozens of miles away could send chills down people's spines. Bang, bang, bang. Luli swung his saber, and the dozens of warriors were all killed. He generated dozens of clones and charged toward where Little White was with his real body. Charge! Kill this human. I will give the title of a lord to anyone who can kill him. Naga yelled. Luli was so young, but he was already so powerful. What's more, he had a freakish spiritual beast. If Luli was allowed to grow, he would be a nightmare for the 4 alien races. Lord! A glint of excitement and enthusiasm rose in the Asmodeans' eyes when they heard Naga's words. The title of the Lord was the same as that of a region master of the Central Plains. With the title of a lord, one could have access to endless resources, and his or her family could become a major force at the eastern land of oceans. Charge, charge, charge! Chapter 532. There would come a time when people would be exhausted. No matter how powerful they were, Shin energy, physical strength, and spirit would be exhausted after continuous fighting. Theoretically speaking, a human sovereign realm warrior would be courting death no matter how many noble lord realm warriors there were. That being said, if a human sovereign realm warrior didn't break out of the encirclement, he would be killed for sure. Similarly, if Luli could break out of the encirclement, the thousands of Asmodeans wouldn't be able to kill him. If Luli kept fighting, he might lose his life in the end. His biggest reliance was soul attacks, which consumed a lot of spirit. Once his spirit was exhausted, his reaction would be slowed down. Luli's defense was weak. How could he survive after being stabbed by the thorns? Luli knew this very well. He had tried many times to break out of the encirclement, but the Asmodeans were not afraid of death, and they were fast. He had no chance to break out of the encirclement, so he couldn't use cloning skill to run away. He realized he had underestimated the Asmodeans. No wonder they were the most cunning and cruel race. They knew how to cooperate, and some of them could pierce through space. They could come and go without a trace. Luli could fall into their trap if he was not careful. Luli didn't even dare to be separated from Little White now. Without Little White, Luli couldn't survive the toxins released from the Asmodeans. He needed Little White to protect him from the arrows coming from all sides. The only thing that Luli was glad about was that few of the thousands of Asmodeans had treasures to protect their souls. Not many Asmodeans knew how to forge artifacts. Only 10 of them had treasures to protect their souls. At the beginning, Luli and Little White killed 4, and then Little White bit another 2 to death. Now, the remaining 4 didn't dare to come closer. The mountain range had turned into hell. In less than an hour, there were more than 700 dead Asmodeans. Luli's hands were getting numb. His soul was weakening. The continuous soul attacks had consumed too much of his spirit. Even his face was getting paler. No, I have to break out. Luli had overestimated his abilities. He thought he could defeat thousands on his own. Only now did he realize that his realm was too low. He could not sustain continuous high-intensity fights. At this rate, even if he could kill 1,000 more Asmodeans, he would lose his life here. Swish, swish, the space on the left trembled. Out of instinct, Luli reached out his blood claw and killed an Asmodean that tried to sneak up on him. His gaze swept the surroundings and discovered that there were densely packed fiends everywhere, with no end in sight. The most important thing was that the devils on the periphery were circling around, ready to reinforce at any time. Wherever Luli went, those Asmodeans would reinforce him. Clearly, Naka was prepared to trade the lives of thousands of Asmodeans for Luli. Naka. Luli squinted. He bellowed and released dozens of clones to distract the enemies for the time, for one breath. Then he dashed toward Naga. To catch bandits, first capture the ringleader. As long as Naga was killed, these devils would definitely flee. Things would be easier after they fled. He could retreat, and he could easily slaughter his way through. Bang, 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 he released his soul attack to frighten the dozen demons in front of him. With a sweep of his long and domineering divine weapon of Dragon King, the dozen demons were all sent flying back, knocking the demons behind them away. Good chance, Luli shouted. He spun his fate wheel at the top of his speed and dashed toward Naga. Naga didn't run away. He didn't even move. Instead, he stared at Luli with a cold smile. Luli was filled with murderous intent. He swung his divine weapon to the left and right, paving out a path of blood as he moved closer to Naga. Little White, watch out for sneak attacks, Luli said to Little White on his shoulder. He sensed something was off. Naga had been careful and never allowed Luli to get close. Why didn't he run away this time? There must be a reason for this abnormality. 100 feet, 150 feet. Luli broke through the encirclement with difficulty. His arms were numb and his body was covered in blood. He looked like a beast bathed in blood. Seeing that Lu Li was moving closer to Naga, the Asmodeans were panicking. They charged at Lu Li with no regard for their own lives. The hierarchy of the Asmodeans was strict. If something happened to Naga, they would be executed when they went back, and their families might be implicated. Lu Li was only 150 feet away from Naga. However, the swarming of the Asmodeans made it difficult for him to break through. Even the distance of 150 feet was difficult. Lu Li lost his temper. Once again, he shouted and released more golden needles of psychic power, killing groups of Asmodeans. Finally, Lu Li moved forward for another 30 feet. He shouted, and the golden needles of psychic power swarmed toward Naga. However, right at that moment, Naga suddenly dashed into the void and disappeared. Lu Li felt a chill run down his spine as if he were being targeted by several vipers. From the depth of his soul came a sense of fatal danger. Every hair on his body stood on end. Something is wrong. In that split a second, Lu Li shouted without any hesitation, "Little White, cover me up with the ding of Barbarian God and suck in all the Asmodeans around me. Then release thunderbolts and let me out." Lu Li had developed an instinct to sense danger after so many close calls. He knew that if he didn't use the ding of Barbarian God now, he would die for sure. Little White would never question Lu Li's orders. A small tripod appeared between Lu Li's eyebrows and enlarged. Then the lid was opened. A strong force enveloped an area with a radius of several feet around Lu Li. Swish, swish. Almost at the same time, the space around Lu Li began to tremble. 5 people rushed out from Lu Li's side, and as soon as they appeared, they tried to stab at Lu Li. Of the 5, Prince Naga of the Asmodeans was one of them. Naga was spinning around. The stinger in his hand was different from other Asmodeans. It was a dark golden one with a chilly chi and energy. One look, and Lu Li could tell that it was not an average one. The weapon was not important. What mattered most was Naga's speed. Naga kept spinning around. He was much faster than the average Asmodeans. Xianqi in heaven and earth were affected, and space was trembling. This was obviously a profound meaning, and it didn't seem to be a low-level profound meaning. The 5 Asmodeans attacked at the same time, and all of them had treasures to protect their souls. Even if Lu Li and Little White could kill 1 or 2 of them, Lu Li would be stabbed to death by one of the Asmodeans. Unfortunately, there was an unforeseen change in this fatal move. Above him, the ding of Barbarian God was flowing with black air, and some mysterious runes were glowing. There were thunderbolts circling around the ding of Barbarian God. A strong force sucked Lu Li in. Little White, on the other hand, flew to the top of the ding of Barbarian God. The force seemed to have no effect on Little White. Ding of Barbarian God? Seeing Lu Li disappear on the spot, Nada looked up and saw an ancient and creepy ding of Barbarian God. Nada was taken aback. He knew about Rue, the Iron's ding of Barbarian God. Once Rue the Iron showed it off, Nada was jealous that the barbarian race gave Rue the Iron a quasi-relic. A strong force came from the mouth of the ding of Barbarian God. Rue, the Iron, and the others had just come out from the void. They could not stand the force and were all sucked in. Boom! The lid was closed. Little White put away the ding of Barbarian God. Lu Li, Naga, and the 4 powerful Asmodeans all disappeared in midair. What? The Asmodeans that were rushing over were petrified. They stared at the huge ding of Barbarian God and the disappearing Naga, dumbfounded. P.S. 5 chapters are here. I am late, but I have finished them. I'm so tired that I can barely keep my eyes open after 2 social engagements. Don't worry about the chapters you owe. I will pay you back. Chapter 533. The Asmodeans outside were stunned, and so were Lu Swan, Ji Mingtian, and the others in the ding of Barbarian God. During this time, Lu Li told Little White to stop releasing thunderbolts. Lu Swan, Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, and the others had just recovered a bit. Now that the ding of Barbarian God suddenly glowed again, they thought Lu Li was going to blast them again. Even Lu Swan and Lu Ni were losing their cool. They were swearing to themselves. However, as the ding of barbarian god glowed, Lu Li suddenly appeared. Everyone was stunned to see a young man in a cyan robe. Then many of them were filled with killing intent. But after the time for one breath, they came back to their senses. Nobody dared to move, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. To them, Lu Li was no different from a demon. They didn't think anything good would come from his sudden appearance. If they dared to act rashly, they would suffer. Lu Li glanced over them and put on a smile. He had an idea. He said lightly, "How are you doing in there? Isn't it a little boring? I will give you some toys. If you can kill the Asmodeans, I will spare your lives. If not, then prepare to die." Buzzing. After a white glare, 5 people suddenly appeared in the ding of barbarian god. Lu Li shouted, "Whether you live or die is up to you. If you want to live, then kill the 5 Asmodeans." "Little White," Lu Li shouted. A ray of light enveloped him, and he disappeared from the ding of barbarian god. Little White teleported him out using the inhibition formation. Swish, 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 everyone's expressions changed. They gathered together. Lu Swan and Lu Ni released their mystic armors at once and stood in front of them. Naka and the others were confused as well. When they came in and saw that Lu Li didn't move, they were even more afraid to move now. What were those dark and swarthy things? Were they humans or ghosts? How could they move before they figured out the situation? Therefore, the situation in the ding of barbarian god became interesting. Lu Swan and the others gathered on one side, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Naka and the other 4 gathered on the other side, glaring at Lu Li as if they were 2 groups of beasts thrown into a cage. "Lu Swan, we will hold them off. Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian, focus on attacking. Dai Fei Yu, release your bloodline skill. The rest of you protect her." Lu Swan was smart. No matter what Lu Li was up to, the 5 Asmodeans could kill them. If they wanted to live, they must kill the 5 Asmodeans first. As soon as Lu Swan gave the order, Dai Fei Yu released her source of life, profound meaning at once. 2 surviving warriors from the affiliated forces surrounded her. "Kill!" Lu Swan bellowed and charged forward with Lu Swan. The 2 of them were protected by their mystic armors. Even if they were injured, Dai Fei Yu would be there to protect them. "Kill!" Yang Xian and Ji Mingtian released their bloodline skills at the same time. Yang Xian released 5 ghost shadows, while Ji Mingtian could only release a black phoenix, as her semi-relic was destroyed by Little White. "Kill these humans." Naka knew that it was either you die or I live. He could only grit his teeth and roar, his body piercing through the air and disappearing. Chi, the other 4 demons all pierced through the space. However, since they were inside the ding of barbarian god, they could not pierce through the space outside. They could only travel through the narrow space inside. Watch out, seeing that the 5 Asmodeans had disappeared, Lu Swan stepped back at once and went to protect Ji Mingtian and Dai Fei Yu. He sensed a fluctuation in the space on the left, so he dashed to the left. Swish, the space on the left was torn apart. A man dashed out like a bolt of lightning. He was aiming at Dai Fei Yu's head, but since Lu Swan was coming, he had to stab at Lu Swan. "Go to hell," Lu Swan sneered. He let the stinger reach his chest while he grabbed the Asmodean's arm with one hand. The ring on his other hand glowed as a dagger appeared. He stabbed at the Asmodean's back. Bang! The stinger made contact with Lu Swan's blue mystic armor, but only produced some sparks. The stinger could not go 1 inch further. The King Kong bloodline of the Lu family was known as the most powerful defensive bloodline of the Central Plains. The dagger in Lu Swan's hand was clearly a holy grade Xian artifact. He grabbed the Asmodean's arm with one hand so that the Asmodean could not move away. The dagger stabbed into the Asmodean's back and twisted it. The Asmodean cried out in pain and then was kicked away by Lu Swan. The Asmodean was not going to make it. A young Master Xian, help me. Almost at the same time, there came a cry from behind. Yang Xian's only follower was stabbed by the Naga's stinger. Yang Xian could not save her because another Asmodean had his eyes on her. The Naga and the 4 Asmodeans dashed out at the same time. They all knew that if they could not kill the humans, they would be the ones dying. Therefore, they were fighting with all their might. Yang Xian's battle prowess was not to be trifled with. He released a few imps to tie down the demon race expert while he took out a saber and slashed at the demon race expert's head. He slashed out tens of times at lightning speed, killing the demon race expert. Ah! Dai Feiyu cried out in surprise. One of the Asmodeans released many poisonous creatures toward Dai Feiyu and Ji Mengtian. Seeing so many poisonous creatures, Dai Feiyu cried out in fright. She even stopped using her bloodline skill and ran for her life. Idiot, Lu Xuan snorted angrily. Dai Feiyu was wearing a holy grade armor, and only a little bit of her body was exposed. She could easily defend herself against those poisonous creatures. What was more, as long as she did not stop using her bloodline skill, she could be bitten by the poisonous creatures. These poisonous creatures were not the toxins of the voodoo race, so they were not a big deal. Wu, one of the Asmodeans, waved his truncheon. Inside the ding of barbarian god, a chilly wind blew and the light dimmed. There seemed to be some ghostly shadows and ghostly noises. With so many poisonous creatures, the scene was even more horrifying. Bang, Lu Xuan dashed around, thinking that his mystic armor was invincible. Unexpectedly, he was smashed away by the Naga's stinger. Even though the mystic armor was not pierced, his chest caved in and blood gushed out. Dai Feiyu, why are you running? Use your bloodline skill, and I will protect you. Lu Xuan yelled. 2 Asmodeans had been killed, and the remaining 3 could be dealt with easily. If their own people were in a mess first, the situation would worsen. Lu Xuan had always been the core of the group. Dai Feiyu was used to following his orders out of instinct. She stopped running and used her bloodline skill. The green glare lit up the dim space inside the ding of barbarian god. Lu Xuan didn't mind Lu Xuan. He stood next to Dai Feiyu and shouted, Ji Mengtian, release more phoenixes. I want to see if these Asmodeans can fly out. Yang Xian released the ferocious ghosts to keep them occupied. Lu Xuan's order calmed down the messy situation. With the help of the phoenixes, many poisonous creatures were burned to death. A Asmodean was entangled by a ferocious ghost. Ji Mengtian's phoenixes flew over, and soon, the Asmodean was burned to death. Of the 5 Asmodeans, only 2 were left. Lu Xuan only lost 1, so there were 6. Naka knew that he could not escape death at this rate. He stopped struggling and shouted, Stop! I am a royal of the Asmodeans. We surrender. Prince of the Asmodeans? Lu Xuan was a bit surprised. Then he was delighted. Capturing a prince of the Asmodeans alive was a great credit. He had been disgraced. Capturing a prince of the Asmodeans alive could save him some face. Ji Mengtian and Yang Xian's eyes glowed. Capturing a prince of the Asmodeans alive was indeed a great credit. It is useless to surrender to them. I am a master of the ding of barbarian god. Naka, only a group of you and them can survive. Chapter 534. Since Luli went out, he had been checking inside with psychic power. Therefore, he sent a message when Naka was about to surrender to Lu Xuan. Naka should surrender to him. What was the point of surrendering to Lu Xuan and the others? Lu Xuan and the others were his prisoners. Naturally, Luli was not happy about it. Another fight broke out inside. Luli retracted his psychic power and began to hunt down the Asmodeans outside. That was right. There were 2,000 Asmodeans outside, but they were being hunted down by Luli all by himself. Not long after Naka and the others were taken in, the Asmodeans fled in disorder. Naka was the prince of the Asmodeans and the commander-in-chief. Now that the commander-in-chief was captured and killed, the morale of the Asmodeans had collapsed. Many Asmodeans fought so hard because they wanted the position of the lord that Naka promised. Now that Naka was dead or alive, who could they go to for the position? Of course, some Asmodeans tried to save Naka. But after Luli killed over 100 with psychic power, they gave up. Naka and the other four were the most powerful in the Asmodeans. Now that the most powerful had been killed, the other average Asmodeans were afraid of death. Naka might be punished or even executed when they returned to the eastern land of oceans if they were captured or killed. But what if the master of Asmodeans showed mercy and spared their lives? They might not die when they went back, but they were certain that they would die if they stayed here. To the Asmodeans, Luli had become a demon that could not die. He had slaughtered nearly 1,000 Asmodeans and killed Naka. He even captured and killed Naga. Ordinary devils like them would only be throwing away their lives if they rushed forward. In a war, morale was of utmost importance. Once morale was shaken, one could run away and the others would flee. Then the Asmodeans would be routed and eventually they would be defeated. Luli was exhausted, but he would not let go of such a good chance. He began to hunt down the Asmodeans to expand his achievement. Charge! Moments later, an earth-shattering battle cry suddenly came from the eastern mountain range. Following that, countless humans rushed out of the mountain range in a frenzy. Luli was overjoyed to see Luo at the front. Yi Luo had sneaked around with the human army without anyone noticing. Also, he'd been hiding all this time. Luli had a whole new level of respect for Yi Luo. The future family patriarch of the Yi family of the Tumulus of Universe was something. At the very least, he was good at commanding armies. Luli, Jiang Qiling shouted from the distance. Luli waved his hand to let her know that everything was fine and told her not to come over. Luli was covered in blood, but it was all from the Asmodeans. He himself was unharmed. He let out a long howl and shouted at Yi Luo. Yi Luo, bring some men to the front of the demon race's base camp to stop them and increase the results of the battle. These 2,000 demons had already become stray dogs, and their morale had dropped to a freezing point. As long as they were stopped from charging into the main camp, they would be able to slaughter a large number of them. Follow me. Yi Luo rushed toward the base camp of the Asmodeans with Lu Lin, Lu Hongyu, and more than a dozen others. Luli joined up with the human army and began to hunt down the Asmodeans that were running away. The human army did not have more than 1,000 people, but after killing 2,000 demons, their morale was high, all of them excited and fanatical. Luli alone could fight against 3,000 Asmodeans and defeat the Asmodeans. What should they be afraid of? The Asmodeans' morale was even lower when they saw so many human warriors and there were shouts and cries everywhere. The Asmodeans didn't dare to fight against the humans. All they wanted was to run away. Hearing that Luli had sent someone to stop Luli from going back to the base camp, some of the Asmodeans didn't dare to go back to the base camp anymore. They fled to all directions. The human army was still the same as before, with 4 to 5 warriors in a group, attacking and defending together. In this way, the human army wouldn't be at a disadvantage against the Asmodeans, but it would be slower. More than half of the Asmodeans ran back to the base camp, while the other half fled to all directions. Luli led the Asmodeans back to the base camp. The teleportation portal was about to be opened. This might be the last battle. Naturally, Luli hoped to gain more points. Jiang Qiling flew over and joined Luli, Jiang who stayed by her side to protect her. Luli asked them to stand on his fate wheel and told Jiang who to release his bead of life to attack. Every now and then, Luli would go over and wipe out any resistance. There were casualties on the human side as well, but many turned a blind eye to it. They were like a bunch of lunatics on steroids, screaming and chasing after the Asmodeans. After more than 30 miles, they arrived at the base camp of the Asmodeans. Suddenly, there were countless small black swords coming at them. This was Yi Luo's bloodline divine skill, slaughtering the enemy with 10,000 swords. The sky full of small swords collided with the bodies of the devils, injuring many of them and stopping them from escaping. The human army was pressing on. The bloody battle had begun. Luli was exhausted, but he had to go around to put out fires. The overall strength of the human side was weaker. If he didn't help, many of them would die here. The battle lasted for more than 2 hours. In the end, many Asmodeans managed to escape back to the base camp. Making sure that there were no other Asmodeans nearby, Li ordered them to retreat. Lu Lin led someone to count the numbers while Lu Hongyu helped the wounded and the dying. Yi Luo led someone to scout around, looking for the Asmodeans to kill. Li didn't fly by himself. He boarded Jiang Hu's beat of life with Jiang Qiling and slowly flew back to the base camp of the human race. Li was so weak that he wanted to lie down and sleep right away. But this was not the time for that. He had to hold on. Now that the battle was over, he had time to check inside the ding of Barbarian God. He curled his lips after checking with his psychic power. He was displeased. Naka and the other Asmodean had been killed. They didn't make any contribution. Lu Xuan and the others were still alive. But Lu Xuan and Yang Xian were injured. Yang Xian seemed to be poisoned. Judging by his looks, he should be fine. The last one of Ji Mingtian's subordinates was killed. Only Lu Xuan and the other 4 were left in the ding of Barbarian God. All the other subordinates of their families were dead. What a shame. If Naka could have killed the 5 of them, that would have been great. Li sighed. An idea came to his mind. Should he send Lu Xuan and the others to the base camp of the Voodoo race or the Feather race and kill them with the help of the alien races? Li gave up on the idea as soon as it flashed by. Now, everyone knew that these 5 people were captured by him. If these 5 people died mysteriously, this debt would still be placed on his head. Never mind. Looking at Jiang Qiling, who was sitting next to him, Li gave up the idea of killing the 5 for now. It was better to go out of the demon-slaying city and see how things went. If things went south, he would kill the 5 to accompany them. Soon, the statistics came out. In total, the Asmodeans lost nearly 2,000 warriors. Of course, half of them were killed by Li alone. Another 100 warriors of the human race died. Almost all of them were at the Eternal Realm. They were too weak. Take a rest. Many of us are wounded. We will go back to the base camp after we have good rest, and then we will go out to the small battlefield. Li ordered when he saw a small valley after flying for 30 miles. The human warriors flew down at once. None of them questioned Li's order. Chapter 535. Every small battlefield fight would last 1.5 years. After 1.5 years, everyone would be teleported back by force. That being said, the fights at the small battlefield would come to an end after half a year. Half a year was enough for the outcome to be decided. Either the 4 alien races would suppress the human race, or the human race would suppress the alien races. Once the outcome was clear, there would be no point in continuing the fight. The weaker side would usually retreat. This time, many powerful warriors of the human race came. Their numbers were not less than the 4 alien races. In addition, Li defeated the allied forces of the 4 alien races at the Tower of Delicacy. The victory of the human race was assured. Later on, the barbarians didn't join the fight. Many warriors of the other 3 alien races were hiding in their base camps. Clearly, they were waiting for the teleportation portal to be activated to evacuate. Therefore, there was no point in continuing the fight. They wouldn't be able to gain many points. Li understood this. After 2 days of rest, he led the army back to the base camp, ready to leave the demon-slaying city. Last time, it took them more than 10 days to come here from the base camp. This time, they were in a good mood. They marched faster and arrived at the base camp in just 10 days. They looked to the base camp from the distance, only to see that it was empty. In the middle of the base camp, in the ruins of a castle, a huge teleportation portal was glowing. We are too late. Li, Jiang Qiling, Yi Luo, and Lu Hongyu looked at each other, feeling bitter. If they had gone out the moment the teleportation portal was activated, they could have taken the initiative. Now that the teleportation portal was activated, warriors of the 4 forces had left in advance. The news would be spread to the ears of powerful warriors of the 4 forces. The 4 forces of the demon-slaying city must be waiting for them in the hall. Li was not in a hurry. He thought about it and said, "Let them wait outside. We will rest here for a while." The teleportation portal would last for a year. Li was not in a hurry to go out. He would let the 4 forces wait outside for a while. Yi Luo asked the army to disperse. Those who wanted to stay stayed, and those who wanted to teleport back should go. He thought about it and said, Lu Li, how about I go out with Lu Lin and Hong Yu and find patriarchs of the demon-slaying hall and tell them what happened. In this way, you won't be in a passive position. Okay. Thank you, Brother Yi. Lu Li nodded. She waved to Jiang Hu and said, Jiang Hu, go out with young Master Yi and the others. When we get out, go find my grandpa and tell him everything. I will go with Lu Li later. Yes, miss. Jiang Hu cupped his fists and accepted the order. Lu Hongyu forced a smile and said to Lu Li, don't worry. I will talk to my great-grandpa when I get out. I think he will be on your side. Lu Li nodded. Yi Luo and the others walked toward the portal and soon vanished in a blur. The hundreds of martial artists walked towards the transmission gate one after another. There was no longer any meaning in staying here. This time, they would be able to obtain a lot of battle merits, so they were all anxious to leave. Lu Li brought Jiang Qiling back to the camp. Looking at the empty camp, he smiled and said, It's good that they are gone. We can spend time alone, surrounded by flowers and under the moonlight. What a wonderful life. Jiang Qiling glared at Lu Li and said angrily, You are still thinking about this at a time like this. There is no point in worrying. Lu Li asked Little White to take out the ding of Barbarian God. He checked inside and ordered, Release electric arcs and blast them half dead. Again? Jiang Qiling was shocked. They were about to leave, but Lu Li was still torturing Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian. When the powerful warriors of the other families found out about them, they would go crazy. You don't understand. Lu Li took her hands and said, I want them to be miserable. I want them to look like they're going to die at any moment so that the other families will be scared. I want them to know that if they dare to hurt me, I will drag Ji Mingtian and the others to hell with me. Jiang Qiling's eyes were filled with determination. She said, If you die, I will die with you. Jiang Qiling's words put more pressure on Lu Li. He looked into her gentle eyes and sighed. He patted her shoulder and sat down with his legs crossed. He began to think about what would happen to them when they got out and how to solve the situation. More and more warriors came back to the base camp from the small battlefield and teleported out. Lu Li was less and less worried. He decided to stay here to cultivate Xian energy and study profound meanings. After 3 or 4 days, Lu Li showed no signs of leaving. She asked, Lu Li, when are you going out? We have to face it when we have to. We cannot run away from it. Ha. Lu Li smiled leisurely and said casually, People of the 4 families must be burning with anxiety. If so, then we shouldn't be in a hurry. Rest and heal your wounds. We will wait for the demon-slaying hall to come in. In 10 days at most, the demon-slaying hall will send someone in. Somehow, Jiang Qiling was relieved to see how calm Lu Li was. She had always trusted Lu Li, so she decided to let it go. She sat down with her legs crossed to cultivate. While Lu Li and Jiang Qiling were living in the small battlefield leisurely, the demon-slaying city was in chaos. Ji Mingtian was the treasure of the Samsara Palace. Yang Xian was the future family patriarch of the Hades Society. Lu Xuan and Lu Ni were treasured by Lu Zhangtan. Dai Feiyu was not the future family patriarch, but she was the most important young lady of the Pavilion of Blossoms. This time, all the families were escorted by patriarchs. The 4 forces all had considerable forces at the demon-slaying hall. There were many patriarchs at the demon-slaying hall. The top 10 had their souls reconstructed, but many patriarchs at the bottom didn't, such as Jiang Tianshan. Once they joined the demon-slaying hall, they would die here, and they would be a member of the demon-slaying hall for the rest of their lives. The first rule of the demon-slaying hall was that warriors of the demon-slaying hall could not interfere in the disputes of the Central Plains. That being said, they were the descendants of their own families. If the patriarchs didn't care, they would have reconstructed their souls a long time ago. Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, Lu Ni, and Dai Feiyu were the best among the younger generation of their families. They were the hope of their families. Now, they were all captured by Lu Li. what kind of suffering they were going through. If it were not for the fact that their jade talismans of life were still intact, proving that they were still alive, the demon-slaying city would have been turned upside down. It was forbidden for humans to kill each other in the small battlefield. How could Luli attack humans in public? He did it to the most famous young masters and young ladies of the Central Plains. This was a slap to the faces of the four forces. One of them was a young lady from the Samsara Palace, the most powerful force at the Central Plains. The demon-slaying city had been bustling recently. Many warriors of the four forces were guarding outside the hall in the small battlefield, waiting for Lu Li to come out and make trouble. When Yi Luo and Lu Hongyu came out, they secretly went to find someone. But when they reported the cause and effect of the matter, those big shots didn't say much. They only said they would wait for Lu Li to come out. Even when Jiang, who went to Jiang Tianshan and reported the matter, Jiang Tianshan didn't say anything. He just told Jiang who to leave. None of the patriarchs of the demon-slaying hall did anything. It seemed to be peaceful, but everyone in the city knew that this was just the prelude to a storm. How powerful were the four forces? How many patriarchs of the demon-slaying hall were from the four forces? How many intricate networks of relationships were there in there? Not even a royal family disciple, let alone Lu Li, could stand the wrath of the four forces. 3 days, 5 days, 8 days. Many people were waiting for the show, but it had been 8 days and Lu Li hadn't come out. It seemed he was going to stay in there for a year before he was teleported out. A patriarch of the Ji family of the demon-slaying hall could not sit still anymore. He sent 2 young disciples to teleport and to pass on his order that Lu Li be teleported out of the demon-slaying city at once. Chapter 536. As a matter of fact, Lu Li was in the right. If Lu Li didn't kill anyone and went out to reason with them, the four forces wouldn't make trouble openly. Even if they couldn't look for him openly, they could look for him in secret. Even if they didn't look for him now, they could still look for him in the future. Any one of the four forces could crush the northern desert easily. Therefore, if Lu Li wanted to solve the problem once and for all, he had to make a scene. He didn't go out at once. Instead, he made an offer. He wanted the Grand Master of the Demon-Slaying Hall to come out, or he would kill Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian. He had pushed himself into a dead end. Either everyone was doomed, or he could solve the problem once and for all. At the very least, he had to be given some buffer time. Lu Li's reply stirred up the entire demon-slaying city. This was the first time someone dared to disobey a patriarch of the demon-slaying hall and to threaten them into compromising. What was the demon-slaying hall? It was the most powerful force of the human race. Most of the powerful warriors of the human race were gathered here. The demon-slaying hall was the guardian of the human race. Without the demon-slaying hall guarding the demon-slaying battleground, the Central Plains would have been invaded by the 4 alien races and the human race would have been wiped out. It could be said that for the people of the Central Plains, the demon-slaying hall was a god. How could Lu Li go against the will of a god? How could Lu Li go against the will of a god? How could people in the demon-slaying city not be shocked and enraged? Lu Li's information was spread out soon. He was an abandoned disciple of the Lu family, and now he was making a name for himself in a small place of the northern desert. He only managed to sneak in with the help of the Jiang family. He was only at the Eternal Realm. He was young, but he was bold. Compared to many senior warriors of the demon-slaying hall, Lu Li was a newborn calf. This calf was challenging a pride of lions. Many patriarchs flew into a rage. Lu Li was challenging their authority. Some patriarchs were clamoring, asking law enforcement patriarch to take Lu Li out by force and kill him on the spot. Of course, this was not something that could be done easily. Law enforcement patriarch would not use his skills at random. That would be against the rules of the small battlefield. What was more, the rules of the demon-slaying hall were strict. Eventually, the matter was brought to law enforcement patriarch. He had a discussion with the top 10 patriarchs, and they came up with 2 solutions. The first option was to send a human sovereign realm warrior in his 30s to bring Lu Li out directly. The second option was to ask the Grandmaster to come back and deal with the matter as Lu Li said. It just so happened that the demon-slaying hall had a human sovereign realm warrior at the age of 30. He was a young warrior trained by the demon-slaying hall itself. The Central Plains did not know about this. This human sovereign realm warrior could get Lu Li out easily. There was no need to use his divine power to break the rules of the small battlefield and send a human sovereign realm warrior in. However, what if Lu Li lost his mind and killed Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian? Even if they could kill Lu Li, it wouldn't be worth it. Patriarch of Law Enforcement thought about it and said, I have some information. Lu Li has taken a quasi-relic from the prince of the barbarian race, the Ding of Barbarian God. That is why Ji Mingtian and the others could be taken in. Do any of you know about that quasi-relic? Can Lu Li kill Ji Mingtian and the others in an instant? Ding a barbarian god? The eyes of the group of elders narrowed slightly. This semi-divine artifact was actually very famous. There was once a barbarian who had taken in many human experts. However, none of the human experts who had been taken in had ever come out. Lu Li is only at the eternal realm, right? How can he take this quasi-relic from the barbarian race? A patriarch questioned. Patriarch of Law Enforcement said indifferently, Lu Li's soul attacks are very powerful. He once defeated thousands of warriors of the allied forces of the 4 alien races. But we will have to ask him how he got the quasi-relic. The patriarchs frowned and exclaimed, how could a warrior of the eternal realm be so powerful? He could fight against the allied forces of the 4 alien races? Theoretically speaking, he should have the ability to kill Ji Mingtian, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, and Dai Feiyu in an instant. An old man with brown eyebrows said, let's not take the risk. If Lu Li really kills the 5, the 4 forces will not let it go. By then, people will be plunged into misery and suffering. Let's go and disturb the Grandmaster. This old man with brown eyebrows clearly enjoyed a high status at the demon-slaying hall. His words silenced the other patriarchs. After a while, another 2 patriarchs agreed with him. Seeing that no one else said anything, Patriarch of Law Enforcement stood up and said, then let's ask the Grandmaster to come out. I will do it myself. Send someone in and tell Lu Li that we can agree to his request. But don't let him hurt anyone or he will die for sure. Patriarch of Law Enforcement left, and so did the others. For patriarchs looked at each other with a mocking smile. Lu Li was abandoned by the Lu family, but he was still the great-grandson of Patriarch of Law Enforcement. Patriarch of Law Enforcement seemed to be fair, but he was siding with Lu Li secretly. Soon, the news spread out. The demon-slaying city was in an uproar again. The Grandmaster had been in closed-door cultivation for 300 years. How could he be disturbed because of Lu Li? Granted, the Grandmaster might not come out, but it was enough to cause a sensation. Who was the Grandmaster? Not even family patriarchs of small families knew about him, let alone civilians of the Central Plains. Only the super families knew about him. Also, those who were not from the 12 royal families would not know much about the Grandmaster. One thing was for sure. The Grandmaster of the Demon-Slaying Hall was the most powerful warrior among the humans at the Great Land. Almost all the Grandmaster of the Demon-Slaying Hall was the most powerful warrior. The Grandmaster had been in the position for more than 1,000 years, and he had never been replaced. It meant that he had always been the most powerful warrior among the humans. Many young people were excited. They were supposed to go back after the small battlefield was over. But now they were staying. If they could meet the Grandmaster, it would be enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. Patriarchs of the 4 forces felt their hearts weighed down when they heard the news. Nobody would dare to act rashly if the Grandmaster came out. One word from the Grandmaster could wipe out the 12 royal families. That being said, the 4 forces were humiliated, especially when the Samsara Palace was the most powerful force at the Central Plains. If they could not teach Lu Li a lesson and regain some dignity, the reputation of the 4 forces would be affected. The Lu family was one of the 4 forces. Lu Li was a disciple of the Lu family as well, but nobody would associate him with the Lu family anymore. Apart from Lu Lin and Lu Hongyu, nobody in the Lu family would take Lu Li seriously, let alone think that he was a disciple of the Lu family. The leader of the Lu family was third patriarch Lu Liantian. He hated Lu Li to the core. Not only did Lu Li capture Lu Xuan and Lu and I, but he also brought shame to the Lu family. All the forces began to take action secretly. They made use of their connections and were ready to work together to get rid of Lu Li. Two young disciples went into the small battlefield again and told Lu Li what Patriarch of Law Enforcement had said. Lu Li thought about it and said he would leave in 2 hours. The two young disciples passed on Lu Li's words. Many warriors gathered outside the hall of the small battlefield. In just an hour, thousands had gathered here. Many more were watching with psychic power, waiting for the show to begin. 2 hours later, the teleportation portal glowed as Lu Li, Jiang Qiling, and Ling Lian appeared at the same time. Lu Li held a ding of barbarian god in his hand, Little White on his shoulder, and Jiang Qiling by his side. When Lu Li was teleported out, he saw a crowd of people outside. Many powerful psychic powers locked onto him. Surges of killing intent surged towards him. He used his dragon roar skill and shouted, "Don't move. I will make the ding of barbarian god explode at once if anyone dares to do anything sneakily. Ji Mingtian, Lu Xuan, and Yang Xian will die with me. P.S. That is all for today. I will save some manuscripts at night, and I will update them again tomorrow." Chapter 537. There were at least 6,000 people gathered at the plaza outside the castle. At least 20 or 30,000 psychic powers were locked on to Lu Li, maybe more. Lu Li would not be able to sense many powerful psychic powers when they scanned over. Many psychic powers contained killing intent. Some were strong, and some were well hidden. Lu Li felt he was being stared at by tens of thousands of wild beasts. He felt he was in an ice house and could be killed at any time. The minimum requirement to join the demon-slaying hall was the noble lord realm. There were so many human sovereign realm warriors here, and nobody knew how many earth immortal realm warriors there were. Only the patriarchs of the demon-slaying hall would know the exact number. There were so many powerful warriors here. Given Lu Li's abilities, many of them could kill him with a slap. From the depth of his soul, Lu Li also sensed fatal danger. Therefore, he shouted at once and even used Dragon Roar. Dragon Roar didn't have much effect on powerful warriors anymore. That being said, there was one benefit of this skill, which was that it could make his voice loud enough to shake heaven and earth. Every corner of the demon-slaying city could hear Lu Li's roar. After he shouted, Lu Li noticed more psychic powers were checking him. Some old warriors in closed-door cultivation must have been alarmed by him. They had to check with psychic powers to see what was going on. "What are you shouting about?" A cold voice came. Then a strong man appeared out of thin air. He looked like a middle-aged man. He seemed to be past his prime. He was Jiang Qiling's grandpa, Jiang Tianshun. The first patriarch was Jiang Tianshun? Lu Li was surprised. Theoretically speaking, patriarch of law enforcement should be the first to come. Jiang Tianshun threw Lu Li a cold glance and then said to Jiang Qiling, "Ling come here. Come back with me." "No." Jiang Qiling stood behind Lu Li stubbornly. She grabbed Lu Li and said, "I want to be with Lu Li. If he dies, I will not live on by myself." "What?" Jiang Qiling's words caused an uproar. This was the future chosen warrior. How come he was siding with Lu Li? It seemed Lu Li had taken him down. Why else would he threaten Lu Li with his life? "Nonsense," Jiang Tianshun snorted. Then, he turned into a blur and dashed toward Jiang Qiling's back. He was so fast that before Lu Li and Jiang Qiling could react, Jiang Tianshun had already chopped at the back of Jiang Qiling's neck. Jiang Qiling's eyes rolled up. She collapsed and passed out. Whoosh! Jiang Tianshun grabbed her by her waist and rushed out. They disappeared from the hall so fast that Lu Li didn't even have time to react. Lu Li sneered. Jiang Tianshun still looked down on Lu Li and would not allow Jiang Qiling to be with him. On second thought, he somewhat understood Jiang Tianshun's actions. Jiang Tianshun might be angry that Jimeng Tian, Yang Xian, and Lu Xuan tried to murder Jiang Qiling, but he didn't want to fall out with the four forces over this. That would cause the exquisite pavilion to be surrounded by enemies, and it would greatly damage the interests of the exquisite pavilion. Or perhaps the four major powers had already reached an agreement with the Linglong pavilion, and they had exchanged their interests. This made Jiang Tianshun shut up on behalf of the Pavilion of Delicacy. Not only did he not stand on Lu Li's side, but he also made it clear that he would not get involved. Anything was possible. Lu Li wasn't too angry. He didn't want Jiang Qiling to be involved in this. He didn't want her to be hurt. He owed her too much. Lu Li was relieved that Jiang Qiling was taken away. He was all alone, and he was not afraid of anyone who had nothing to lose. Worst came to worst, he could take her down with him. Lu Li made up his mind. He looked outside coldly and used Xian energy to wrap around the ding of Barbarian God. Little White's horns were glaring. Lu Li put on a cruel smile and shouted, "Where's the Grand Master of the Demon-Slaying Hall? If you don't make a decision, I will have to die with the young masters and young ladies." Lu Li used his dragon roar skill as well. As soon as he finished his words, many angry shouts came out. "How dare you, punk! How dare you be so rude to the Grand Master? You are unforgivable. Ignorant kid, how dare you? Your death is not to be regretted. Courting death." Shouts came out one after another. Lu Li was too arrogant. He was challenging the authority of the Demon-Slaying Hall in public. Anyone else would have been slapped to death if they dared to shout like this in the Demon-Slaying Hall, let alone talk like this. Ah ha ha ha. Lu Li was not afraid at all. He laughed out loud and said, "The Demon-Slaying Hall is the guardian of the human race. We are revered by billions of people. Members of the Demon-Slaying Hall are also the most powerful warriors of the human race. They're the founding fathers of the human race. You have lived for a long time, and you are at the peak of the human race. Theoretically speaking, you should have a heart as broad as the ocean. Lu Li is only 17. You're a bunch of senior warriors. Can't you just let a young man like me behave like this? Today, I am roaring at the Demon-Slaying Hall for justice. If you cannot give me that, I will die with everlasting regret." Lu Li had thrown caution to the wind. The worst that could happen was death. Jiang Qiling was taken away, and there was no patriarch of law enforcement or the grandmaster of the Demon-Slaying Hall. Lu Li felt the situation was getting out of control. Therefore, he had to take the risk and make a big scene. Lu Li was skillful with his words. He put the old guys on a pedestal and took advantage of his young age. If a bunch of old guys were to punish him for his lack of manners, then it would mean that they were petty and would become the laughingstock of the world. Lu Li's idea seemed to be too optimistic. A cold snort exploded in his soul, making him dizzy. Then he felt a cool breeze blowing over, and the space around him instantly froze. Not only was the space frozen, he felt the time in the hall had stopped as well. Swish! A hand reached out from the air. Lu Li watched as the hand grabbed the ding of Barbarian God and then went back into the space. When the hand disappeared, the space around him was unfrozen again. Time seemed to be flowing again. The only difference was that the ding of Barbarian God in Lu Li's hand was gone. Swish, 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 Lu Li's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. The situation was going to the worst. The only thing he could rely on was destroyed. He had underestimated the means and skills of those old freaks. Whoosh, another gentle breeze came. A man emerged next to Lu Li. It was an old-fashioned, skinny old man. The old man reached out a hand and grabbed Lu Li's shoulder, then dragged him out. The old man was only holding Lu Li's shoulder, but Lu Li couldn't move his body, not even a finger. Little White was standing on Lu Li's other shoulder. It was trying to move, but it couldn't. Oh no. Lu Li forced a smile to himself. Back at the base camp in the small battlefield, he had calculated many possible situations, and he had come up with many ways to deal with them. At the moment, he realized that in front of absolute power, he was no different than an ant. None of the ways he had come up with were meaningful. Chapter 538. Lu Li had completely offended Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, Dai Feiyu, Lu Swan, and Lu Swan. He didn't know if Dai Feiyu would get back at him. But if he didn't kill them, Ji Mingtian, Lu Swan, and Yang Xian would definitely seek revenge. However, if he killed them, the four forces would turn the northern desert into a bloodbath. This was a dilemma. Lu Li wanted to make a big deal out of this and use the lives of Ji Mingtian and the others and the dignity of the Grand Master of the Demon-Slaying Hall to suppress the four forces. He wanted to strike a deal so that the four forces wouldn't seek revenge against him. It was a good idea, but the reality was cruel. As soon as he came out, Jiang Qiling was taken away, and the only thing he could rely on was taken away. Ji Mingtian and the others were saved, and the Ding, a barbarian god, was taken away. In the end, he was captured. Now he was being let out. Nothing was under his control anymore. What would happen in the end? It was up to God whether he could survive or not. Aha, reckless fool. He is young and frivolous. He thinks he's the best in the world just because he has some abilities. In the demon-slaying city, he is courting death. I don't think this punk can survive. Roaring at the demon-slaying city and threatening the demon-slaying hall are enough to sentence him to death. I heard that this punk defeated the armies of the four alien races. It is such a shame that he can be so strong at such a young age. How many human talents have there been in the past hundreds of thousands of years? But there is only one demon-slaying hall. Even Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, and Lu Swan would be slapped to death if they angered the three Grand Masters, let alone a genius of this level. The four forces have been secretly working for so long. How can this punk survive? People were discussing outside, and Lu Li could hear them. Lu Li's mind was weighed down as he looked at the pairs of eyes that were sneering at him, as if he were a dead man. He was not afraid of death. However, Bai Qiushue had not been saved, Lu Ling had not been found, and Lu Renhuang had not been rescued. He was not willing to give up. However, he couldn't even move a finger. He was led by a patriarch to a huge castle. There was nothing he could do. The castle was near the plaza. From the outside, it was large. It must be a hall of patriarchs or something like that. A group of people had gathered outside the hall. The patriarch led Lu Li into a spacious hall in strides. So many experts. Lu Li glanced over from the corner of his eyes. There were at least 100 people here, and all of them were powerful warriors above the human sovereign realm. These 100 or so people seemed to be the strongest experts of the human race. Of course, there were definitely some old monsters who were in seclusion or didn't care about worldly affairs, so they didn't appear. More than 100 people stood on two sides, and only 11 people were qualified to sit. There were 5 people on the left and right, and there were 3 thrones at the head of the table. The thrones were a bit taller, making them seem high and mighty. However, there was only one person sitting on it. Lu Li was left in the middle of the hall. The strange force on him was gone. Both he and Little White could move now. Squeak, squeak, Little White bared its teeth and screamed at the patriarch. Then it sneaked into Lu Li's sleeve. Lu Li stood up slowly and glanced over the hall. Many of them were unfamiliar to him. He only knew Jiang Tianshun and the law enforcement elder. The law enforcement elder sat on the first seat on the left. It was obvious that the person sitting on the first seat had a higher status than him. Grand Master of the Demon-Slaying Hall. Lu Li looked at the powerful warrior sitting on the first seat. Lu Li could not tell his age, but he seemed to be in his 50s or 60s. His hair was gray, and his face was expressionless. His aquiline nose and dashing eyebrows gave him a dignified look. Lu Li, on your knees. The patriarch that grabbed Lu Li shouted. Pointing to the old man at the head of the table, he said, "Greet Deputy Master, Law Enforcement Elder, and the other patriarchs." Deputy Master? Lu Li's heart was weighed down again. Instead of the Grand Master, it was Deputy Master? This was another piece of bad news. He didn't kneel. The situation had come to this. It would be pointless even if he knelt to death. Since that was the case, why did he have to kneel down? Lu Li sneered and said, "If you can do me justice, I will kowtow to each of you for 100 times. I don't think you want to deal with this fairly. Then I will not kowtow. Kill me or torture me if you want." After all, the demon-slaying hall is unreasonable. Boom! With that said, a surge of energy pressed down on Luli. Luli knelt on the ground. The energy was as heavy as hundreds of thousands of pounds. It was so sudden that Luli could not stand it. Bang! Luli knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground. Otherwise, he would have been pressed against the ground. He groaned. A silver glare rose in his eyes as he released the burning blood skill. Then he pulled out the divine weapon of Dragon King from his back with one hand and supported himself on the ground. He lifted one foot while trembling. His back stood up slowly against the force of gravity. He raised his head bit by bit. In his eyes, there was a ferocious glare, like an unruly lone wolf. From the hall came a slight sound of surprise. The energy just now was released by Deputy Master. Luli, at his realm, could stand up under such pressure and stand up. How dare he take out his weapon and show ferocious glare in his eyes when facing so many powerful warriors? Ha ha! Luli smiled coldly. The silver glare in his eyes grew brighter. He stared at Deputy Master, who was sitting high above, and said word by word with difficulty, "Deputy Master, you are so impressive. But you have lived for hundreds of years. Don't you feel ashamed to bully a 17-year-old kid like me? Or could it be that you, the second palace master, can only display your authority by bullying children?" A light murmur resounded once more, and then the expressions of many became strange. They wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to. They wanted to say something, but didn't know how to refute Lu Li's words. Soon, the energy on Lu Li disappeared. Lu Li's words were too sharp. If Deputy Master were to continue to suppress Lu Li, his prestige would be greatly damaged if word got out. After all, Lu Li was only 17 years old. He was just a kid for everyone here. Bullying a kid was not something to be proud of. Deputy Master was still expressionless. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. He said in a calm tone, without any emotion, "You can't save your life. You don't have to try to irritate me. The demon-slaying hall has its own rules. The rules are not set by us, but by our ancestors. Anyone who dares to violate them must die, and you have committed several crimes punishable by death." Ha ha! Luli laughed at Deputy Master's words. At this moment, he was ready to risk everything. He asked in a deep voice, "I don't mind dying. But before that, can I say something and ask some questions?" Deputy Master didn't nod or shake his head. He didn't say anything. It was a silent consent to Lu Li's words. Lu Li looked around, but didn't look at Law Enforcement Patriarch for one more second. Law Enforcement Patriarch didn't look at Lu Li or say anything since he came in. Lu Li didn't have much hope in him. He had to save himself if he wanted to live. He looked around and asked, "Deputy Master, may I ask what kind of crimes Lu Li has committed? Which ones exactly? Let Lu Li die knowing why." Deputy Master still didn't answer Lu Li's question. He looked at the Patriarch next to Lu Li and said, "Patriarch Yang, you tell him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."